HPXLOTM. Please call me Mr. Error by author Hoyne_Kyoma Chapter 1-30. Mixing the Harry Potter world and the LOTM world has not been a straightforward process. There have been several changes made to my liking in both worlds so that the story could progress more smoothly. I hope you will assume that this is an Harry Potter world and an LOTM world since some things don't play along nicely otherwise. Thank you, I hope you enjoy reading. Under the fiery crimson light of the blood moon, a teenager was scurrying around his room holding a bag of food delight. The room was nothing special. It had 4 white walls, a dresser, a rug, a bed, a bedside lamp, a curtained window, a table with a potted plant and a simple door that was currently closed with a poster stuck to the back of it. The poster was of a man with a golden crystal monocle over his right eye. "This is it," the young boy shouted in absolute joy as he looked outside the window at the fiery crimson moon. The ritual should have the best effects when the moon is eclipsing. Not one to waste any more time at this auspicious moment in history, the boy began to run. Running to the first corner of the room, the boy stopped near the dresser and pulled out a stack of rotis, a staple food where he lived, and placed it onto the shelf built into the dresser. Running around again, the boy came to the next corner of the room that was covered by the bed and placed a small bowl of rice on the corner of the bed surrounded by the walls. Sliding down the bed towards the next corner, he placed down a glass of buttermilk on the curtained window. And turning to the last corner, he carefully placed a box of sweets on the same table as the potted plant. A little drool leaked out of his lips as he admired the tasty sweets, but he quickly shook his head and rid it of thoughts that were not useful to him. Running back to the center of the room, the boy tried to relax and control his breathing. But the excitement in his eyes grew as he looked at the clock that was about to strike 3 o'clock in the morning. All right, now that this is done, I just need to chant the ritual incantations and connect with the deity to ask for what I want. Taking the first step in a counterclockwise direction to make the side of a square, the young boy prepared to chant. Accompanying the tension created by the young boy, crimson moonlight danced on the pale leafless willow tree that shadowed his window, eagerly looking at the scene. The immortal Lord of heaven and earth for blessings. Taking the next step counterclockwise to complete the square, he chanted, the Sky Lord of heaven and earth for blessings. Taking the third step, he chanted with increased reverence, the exalted Thirk of heaven and earth for blessings. Taking the final step, he chanted in a slightly higher pitch, barely hiding the excitement as he etched closer to the ritual's completion, the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings. I pray for a miracle. I pray for a way to become the Lord of the mysteries. I pray for you to use your mighty powers to grant me the tag of the protagonist. I pray for you to grant your follower this simple wish. The boy standing on the original spot from where he had started the ritual closed his eyes and waited about 5 minutes for the ritual to end. Throughout the time he remained silent, the boy's brows furrowed as if he was concentrating hard on something. No murmurings. No ravings. Did the ritual fail? The boy mumbled as he squinted his eyes open in the dead of the night, trying to spot something different about his surroundings. Sigh. Do I need to light candles, set up a wall of spirituality and sanctify this place after all? The boy wondered out loud with disappointment. But I don't know how to set up a wall of spirituality and sanctify this place. And which essential oils do I even burn to please the celestial worthy of heaven and earth? But didn't Joe Mingrui do it without any of these? The boy soon finished his musings and walked towards all the corners with his shoulders slumped to recoup all the offerings. He wanted to begin feasting on the food that so eagerly wished to be tasted and was tempting him. Is it just me or did the food grow tastier? Maybe this is a sign for me to redo the ritual with tastier foods. Well, I can always try during the next eclipse. Slam. Thud. What was that? The boy was startled, and spilled a bit of buttermilk, as he watched the windows that had shut close with force enough to create resonating tremors through the room. Oh, must have been the wind. The young boy opened the window and placed its latch onto the hook so that it wouldn't slam shut so suddenly once again. Why did it get so stormy all of a sudden? I'm sure the meteorological department will have some answers tomorrow. Or perhaps another cyclone is passing by and I missed the warning. SSSSCCCCRRRECCCCCHHHHHH. A loud unfiltered noise that resembled the screeching of tires poured in through the open window, irritating the boy, causing him to take a few steps backwards while closing his ears. BOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOO breathtaking crimson light that had painted the view of the city from outside his window. Beautiful. The boy whispered into the cracks of the silent night that remained occupied mostly by the sounds of the explosion reaching high in the sky. Several avian creatures screeched and tweeted with each other, painting the sightless picture of horror and disturbance. The birds near the explosion dove away or sheltered under ledges to avoid the brightly burning fiery embers raining down on the surroundings. When did so many crows start living here? The young boy looked at the fiery remains of what appeared to be a collision between multiple vehicles on the road. The largest he could recognize was an oil tanker that had exploded after a truck had buried into it. Scary. Boom mmmmmmm. The young boy looked at the sight with an awestruck expression as the explosion had sent a cloud of smoke and fire high into the sky. But that wasn't the only thing that the boy saw being sent flying into the sky. What the heck? The boy's head tilted to follow the head of the truck high into the sky until he found his face pressed onto the window grill, trying to peer beyond its bounds. Where did it go? The boy wondered as the head of the truck left his vision. He stepped back to admire the explosion site once again. The burning remains of the accident reflected off in the young man's enchanted eyes, but before he could even react or understand what happened. Boom mmm. The head of the truck crashed into his room right through the roof and killed him by squishing him underneath itself like a bug under a leg. In a dirty long narrow alleyway, 3 teenage boys surrounded and cornered a young boy who looked younger than 7. His malnourished frame and pale sickly skin only contributed to making him look a few steps away from death. Where's the money for this week, Loki? 2 young boys leaned on the walls of the houses in front of them, planning to block Loki from escaping through them. What do you want? Loki asked with a brash undertone, his calm eyes scanning the surroundings for any way of escape remaining the only indication of his intelligence, but the young boys were used to it. You ain't fooling us this time, Loki. The boy in the middle, the leader of the small gang, knocked Loki backwards by pushing his chest. I have nothing to pay you with, Ludwig. Leave me alone. Loki tried to push himself out of the untimely encircle, but he couldn't slip his tiny weak body through the cornering of strong boys. Then you leave me no other choice, little head, Ludwig said with a sneer on his face as he clapped his hands twice, summoning 2 similarly aged strong boys from behind the bend. As soon as Loki saw them, his eyes widened with horror as he desperately tried his best to push through the group around him. No, don't do this, Ludwig, Loki shouted, making Ludwig sneer with an arrogant expression as he enjoyed looking at the despair on Loki's face. You hid her well, Loki. It took us quite a bit of work to find her. Muffled shouts and groans. The 2 boys were carrying a chubby young girl who was shouting as much as she could through the dirty rag stuffed into her mouth, along with the rag wrapped around her eyes, which was soaking wet with her tears. The little girl wore a clean white frock sewn on which were different colored flowers that gave her the appearance of a little white angel. Elaine, I will save you. Don't worry. Loki tried his best to push through the older kids encircling him as he tried to do everything from scratching and biting the hands of those keeping him back, but his malnourished body was unable to exert much force. You know what we want, Loki. Give it to us and she won't have to go through much. Take it. This is all I have. Loki bent low and pulled out a wad of cash from inside the worn soles of his torn shoes and threw it at Ludwig's face. The momentary surprise caused Ludwig and the boys encircling him to relax, allowing Loki to slip between the gang and rush towards Elaine, who had quietened down a little bit after hearing his voice. Loki nearly tripped on the oversized pants and shirts he was wearing, but managed to pull Elaine from the clutches of the 2 young boys who were holding her forcefully. Are you all right, Elaine? Loki immediately asked as he pulled out the dirty cloth stuffed into the little girl's mouth along with the rag strip tied around her eyes. Big BW other, they are, Sniffle boad boys, sniffle, the little girl cried into Loki's arms as he did his best to check her for injuries. Where each scratch on her only infuriated him. Don't worry, the bad boys will leave. Okay. Sniff sniff, the little girl still crying relaxed a little bit into the comfort of her big brother's arms. Clang. Just as the moment between the brother and sister was turning the mood of the dim alleyway harmonious, it turned for the worse when Loki saw Ludwig with a steel rebar which he was dragging as he walked towards Loki and Elaine. You don't need to do such a thing, Ludwig. Loki whispered as he picked up his little sister with a surprising amount of strength and began to retreat towards the street. But before he could step out into the street and escape from Ludwig, a couple more young teenage boys stepped into it, closing both exits available to him. Let me through. Loki did his best to shuffle between the goons that had blocked the exit but couldn't exert much strength because of the little girl he was carrying in his small malnourished frame. No. This can't be happening. I can't let Elaine get hurt. With unwilling eyes, Loki scanned all around the alleyway but found nothing to revolt with. So he did the only thing he could. He collapsed and turned towards a wall to hide Elaine and used whatever he could of his scrawny body to keep her safe from all harm. Ludwig walked until he reached Loki and with a smirk on his face started to educate him. Thud. This is all because of you, innit? Thud. Because a twat like you can't seem to learn that you are weak and pathetic. Thud. Because a wanker like you can't seem to understand that you are below me. With 3 quick strikes to his back, Loki only tightened his grip on Elaine as he did his best to keep the miserable groans from escaping his mouth. Thud. Keep Elaine safe. Loki hammered into his mind along with the strikes that hammered into his back. Thud. If you step out of line once more. Keep Elaine safe. Thud. I will make sure you see the worst happen to your little sister. Keep Elaine safe. Thud. I'm sure you don't want that, do you, Loki? Blood leaked and caused the colors on his oversized shirt to grow darker as they uncomfortably stuck to his skin, but Loki didn't let go. Big bewather. Elaine cried as she sensed what was happening and her tears covered Loki's shirt, but Loki did his best to remain silent and protect Elaine so she wouldn't be hurt. He feared opening his mouth would only make the situation worse. The best he could do for now was to hug his sister tight as he could. With one last swing, Ludwig slammed the rebar into Loki's head. Thud. Ludwig's hit had just enough force in it to rock Loki's brain and give him a concussion, not enough to kill him, yet also not enough to brush away. If he weren't so malnourished, that is. Blood instantly began to leak from Loki's head as his grip on Elaine loosened, yet he did his best to protect Elaine despite the pain, but it seemed that this was the final straw that broke the camel's back. As he felt his consciousness fading, Loki just had one last thought. If only I were stronger, Elaine wouldn't have to suffer like this. In this moment of clarity, a dormant energy within him resonated with something beyond space and time, bursting forth with a remarkable possibility that opened a path that few in this world could even imagine. Tisk. Seeing no more reactions from Loki after repeatedly kicking him in the head, Ludwig assumed he had finally lost consciousness from the pain, especially since Elaine had pried herself out of Loki's grasp. Huh. How cute. Too bad I'm tired, Ludwig said, watching Elaine. Elaine was glaring at Ludwig, doing her best to protect her big brother by stretching her tiny chubby hands across his body without realizing that he had passed away. Ludwig suddenly tensed and swung the rebar again, causing Elaine to flinch, yet she stayed on top of Loki, only holding him tighter. Haha, what a protective bitch. Ludwig tossed the rebar in his hand onto the concrete floor and left with his gang of goons while happily counting the money that Loki had given them, leaving behind a corpse and an angry little girl. Bewather. Bewather. Big bewather. Get up. The boad boys left. Elaine shouted as she shook her brother, trying to wake him up from his inanimate state. Big bewather. Wake up. Elaine will be angry if you don't wakey. Against all odds, Loki's fingers twitched, followed by his eyebrows, his lips, and finally his eyelids that shot open as his eyes hysterically scanned the area around himself for any dangers. What the hell? Who is this little girl? Why does my head hurt so much? Ouch. And my back. It hurts so much. It feels like I've been whipped. Loki slowly pushed himself up using his quivering elbows, subject to the stern gaze of the little girl who had almost started crying. Big Bewather. Elaine happily hugged her brother tightly like she had just lost him forever. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Calm down, Elaine. Calm down. Loki winced in pain as Elaine touched the wounds on his back and then became startled at the name that arrived from his mouth during the subconscious expression. Yes, Big Bewather. What in the world? Elaine. Who is Elaine? This little girl. How do I know her name? A sudden pain that stitched his skull back together caused Loki to hold his head with both his hands as he felt like something or rather someone was trying to inflate his dented head like a balloon. He closed his eyes and tried his best to keep away the pain, but it only got worse. My head hurts. Did something from the accident smash my head? Was it the truck head? Did it land in my room? After about a full minute, in which Loki heard audible clicking noises from inside his head, he allowed himself to relax a little. The pain, it seems to be, reducing. Wait a second. An unknown place. A head wound that seems to be healing. And a sister. Opening his eyes, Loki immediately scanned his hands and the rest of his body in view. A soft gasp escaped Loki's lips as he realized something. My body. This is not my body. Contrary to what one would expect, instead of feeling angry, sad or even shocked and confused, Loki at this moment felt joy. Joy beyond reason as only one thought echoed inside his head. This is a miracle. Have I come into the world of Lord of the Mysteries? But suddenly memories started to pour into his mind. No, that's not right. I'm in Britain, in the year 1990. As his head fully healed, bits and pieces of memories about the character called Loki formed inside his head. Loki's memories fused deeply into the young boy's soul and caused him to feel everything Loki ever did, all in a span of a few seconds. It almost caused him a concussion once again, but a strange power prevented him from falling unconscious throughout the duration and kept him awake. But with all these new memories, the ideas that he had imagined about this world immediately shattered and sent him spiraling downward from his momentary joy. My name is Loki. I'm a street orphan and I have a sister. What the hell? Did the celestial worthy of heaven and earth make a mistake while transmigrating and reincarnating me? Bewather. Big Bewather. Are you alright? Elaine asked Loki as she shook his bony shoulder, trying to elicit a response from him after he had gone silent for the last few minutes. Loki snapped out of his thoughts as his eyes broke away from staring at the imaginary world he had created inside his head and looked back at Elaine with a gaze filled with recognition and responsibility. I don't know if it is Loki's last wish that did this, but given how deeply his memories have entwined with me, it's hard not to see the little girl as anything but my own cute little sister. How could you leave such a pretty and cute sister behind, Loki? Worry not. I shall give our sister the best treatment she deserves. Yes, Elaine, big brother is all right. Come, let's go home and then we can eat dinner today. Aren't you hungry after you kicked up such a big fuss? No. Elaine didn't kick fuss. Elaine only wanted to be with Big BW other. A smile formed on Loki's face. He patted Elaine's head and stood up from the concrete floor of the dark and dingy alley he was lying on. With great effort, if his trembling feet and hands were any indication. The muscles in his back creaked and remained knotted in various places as he did his best to stand upright and limp along with Elaine, who was trying her best to support him. How did he remain so quiet in the face of so much pain? Goddamn, you've got a lot of determination for being so much younger than me. I will do my best to get the revenge you deserve, and dish out as much pain as I can to Ludwig for trying to harm our angel-like little sister. Stumbling a little bit, Loki balanced himself with the help of his sister when his eyes fell on her pretty white dress. Oh, she'll get saddened because of my blood stain on her dress. Shifting through his memories, Loki had learnt that while not true, he had always told Elaine that the dress was their mother's last gift to them before she passed away. He told this so that Elaine would always think she had someone who loved her if he ever died or went missing. I'll try to keep her attention away from it and see if I can swindle her into thinking that it was always like that. I also need to find a way to earn money quickly and move away from this area, otherwise, Ludwig and his gang of bullies won't leave me and my sister alone. Arriving in front of their home, which was just a worn-down wooden shack that was propped up with haphazardly placed poles and plastic bags to keep the rain out, Loki smiled affectionately and rubbed his sister's head. "Thank you for helping Big Bewather walk all the way home, Elaine." HMPF. Elaine is a good girl. UMU, Elaine is a very very good girl. Loki said, patting Elaine's head, which caused her to giggle. Hehehehe. And since his experience with the original Loki's memories were still fresh in his mind, the laughter fell on his ears like the symphony of a Bach concert in a wondrous orchestra hall, causing him to smile and tear up a little. Now that I am Loki and Elaine is my sister, I need to protect her and keep her safe. At least to the best of my abilities, it's the least I owe to him for taking over his life. Walking into the house that was built for their size, Loki pulled off his dirty shirt and stowed it away in a plastic bag. I need to get a new pair of shirts. Perhaps I can find some discarded ones in trash bins again. After washing both his and Elaine's hands with a bottle filled with tap water he'd gotten from the public library nearby, Loki knelt down to pull out a floorboard. Underneath it was a piece of bread that was wrapped in a newspaper. Looking at the bread, a strange memory surfaced in Loki's mind as a soft smile graced his lips. Following this memory, he broke the bread into 2 pieces in a ratio of 8:2 and handed over the larger part to his little sister. Big BW other. Big BW other. I grew up today, so I can have the small part. But Big Brother also grew up today, Elaine. So you're still small. Have the big part, because small people need more food. Shaking her head rapidly, Elaine mewed and squealed to show her disagreement with Loki. No. Today I grew up and became bigger. Elaine said this and pouted cutely as she turned away from her brother in mock anger. All right, Elaine, look. Today I will have a little bit more. Loki said and broke off a small piece of bread from the large part and handed over the rest to Elaine. Big Bewather. Look. Elaine will grow stronger and taller soon and then you can have the bigger piece. Haha, sure, I'm sure my Elaine will grow up a lot and become a strong and beautiful lady. I pinky promised Big Bewather. Watching the crimson moon of the deep night, Loki meditated on the problem he was facing as Elaine slept with her head on his thighs. Well, now that everything is nice and quiet, I can think about what has happened. Loki looked down at the little girl and brushed her hair with his fingers casually as his mind drifted. He had a rather enlightening conversation with himself. Since I've not been corrupted by any outer deities or true gods, even after I have a remarkable amount of mysticism knowledge about them, am I really not in the world of Lord of the Mysteries? Or perhaps the Evernight goddess is using her concealment to protect me from turning into an eldritch horror and losing control. I can try reciting the true names of various true gods and great old ones, but if I am in the LOTM world, things would end badly for me. The only thing that points to the fact that I'm not in the world of LOTM, other than my memories, is that I've seen a car. Which means there is oil in this world, something that was extinct in the world of LOTM. Unless this is also a miracle of the Fool's Pathway. But if it is not the world of LOTM, how did I get transmigrated into this world? And then there's the luck enhancement ritual. I could try doing the luck enhancement ritual I did before I was transmigrated to see if, like Klein, I can also gain access to the realm above the gray fog. If I can, that would be definitive proof that I am in the LOTM world, or at least something that resembles it. But where do I do the ritual? And with what do I do the ritual? It's not like I'm loaded with food or a starter money pack like Klein was. With what happened today, it'll be hard to scrap food just to fill our stomachs for the next few weeks. Sigh. I think I know how I can earn money, but I don't know if it'll work as I expect it to. Loki used to steal money from people at popular tourist sites like the British Museum each day. His small stature and the general unawareness of the tourists left him unnoticed and confident in his abilities to steal. Something he had been doing for as long as he was able to walk. Loki's, or rather now my, mom was a drug addict and lived on the streets, and for as far back as I can see in my mind, she never did anything to properly raise me up. If possible, she would have even sold me to get her hands on more crack. Even when Elaine was born, and caused the death of their mother, Loki was the one who raised Elaine by expending his blood, sweat and tears to take care of her. His daily routine was set in stone. Wake up before Elaine, steal from the streets of London and then finally return home with food for the day. This religious routine had kept Elaine well fed for the last few years. There was only so much he could earn, and he didn't want to let Elaine ever feel hungry. Ludwig and his gang on the other hand were the people he had to pay protection, money to so that rival gangs would not touch me or Elaine during our stay in his territory. I can try speaking the true name of the Evernight goddess right. Since she must be protecting me and keeping me concealed from the other gods. Alright then, here goes nothing. 3, 2, 1. Ammonizes. Out of fear from uttering a name he was likely not worthy to speak, the hair on Loki's arms and legs stood up, forming goosebumps. I feels like the temperature just dropped. Is someone gazing at me? Loki looked up at the beautiful crimson moon and wondered if the goddess was looking at him, but after the undisturbed eternal silence of the night remained for the next few minutes he gave up. Maybe the Evernight goddess doesn't want to show herself so soon. Didn't she only show herself to Klein much later down in the story too? Alright, I have 2 more ideas. But I hope none of them work. Adam. Speaking the forbidden name, Loki looked around vigilantly at each and every corner of the shack and then out onto the street, but once he found no one again, he relaxed a little. Final name then. Loki nodded to himself and gulped before saying the name he and most of the readers of LOTM feared terribly. Amen. The goosebumps on Loki's hands grew more pronounced as he paid keen attention to everything around him, trying to even see if any of the insects around him had maybe put on monocles on their right eyes, but seeing nothing of the sort, Loki relaxed further. At least Eamon and Adam are not here for sure. That's good news. But is this really not the world of LOTM? With a disappointed sigh, Loki closed his eyes and relaxed a bit on the unstable walls of the shack that would collapse if a stone was thrown at them, but his underfed weightless body didn't make a difference. Time to sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. I doubt I can steal anywhere near as efficiently as Loki did it. Instead of stealing, I need to figure out how to earn more money and see if I can perform the luck enhancement ritual somehow. Suddenly Loki flinched when the slowly healing wound on his back came in contact with wooden splinters. Curses. My back still hurts. I will make sure to beat you up for this, Ludwig. Damn bastard. I just have to grow up a little bit and then I will be able to give him the infamous attitude adjustment, just like John Cena. Waking up early the next morning, Loki opened his eyes and found Elaine still sleeping on his thigh. Damn, I'm afraid to move my leg now. There was no blood flowing into my leg for the entire night. I'm pretty sure it's going to feel like static. Carefully lifting Elaine's head and putting it on an old cloth to prevent her from resting her head on the solid wood floor, Loki stood up. Damn, it hurts. But seeing that pretty little face that's drooling is worth it. Loki thought about Elaine as he watched her snore into oblivion. Turning back and limping through the street half naked, Loki thought of the things he would need to find today in the early morning so that he could begin earning money before school began. I need a cardboard and a pen. I hope my plan is successful. I don't want to resort to stealing again, especially after having been caught by the coppers twice. I'm pretty sure if I try and steal anything, I'll just get caught. Nodding to himself, Loki set out on the road to meet his adventure. Arriving at a dumpster behind a Tesco, Loki began to scan the dumpster for a relatively medium-sized piece of cardboard that would be about his height and one he could carry easily. Cardboard, where are you? Perfect cardboard, where are you? Cardbo, I found a pen. Picking up the pen and storing it inside a pocket on his dirty pants, Loki went back to searching for the perfectly sized cardboard. Is this a new shirt? Why did they toss it out? Oh well, I can use this instead of staying naked. Changing into the new shirt that looked like it had been painted with markers, Loki used the box that it had come in as the cardboard he needed by tearing the sides and flattening it a little. All I need to do now is write about my business on it. Sitting down in the dumpster, Loki began to scratch on the plain side of the cardboard with the pen he had just picked up. And after a few minutes of designing in whatever primitive fashion he could, Loki took a step back to admire his work. This looks fine. Ouch. Curses, my wrist hurts. And my back hurts too. Did reviving not heal me entirely? Or is it just the malnourishment that is catching up? And I stink. Maybe I should wash myself in the River Thames before I go to any school. Is it even clean? A couple of minutes later, having taken a short shower using a tap that was attached to someone's house near the River Thames, Loki sneaked onto a bus to reach the crossroads he remembered in his memories. Finally, I'm here. Taking a short hike from the crossroads, Loki had arrived at the school nearest to him, Stonewall High, the local state school. I hope I'm not late. Finding a bench near himself, Loki sat himself down holding onto the cardboard sign he had made, displaying it to all the students who were walking into the gates of Stonewall High. Waiting for about 2 minutes with no one noticing him, Loki grew a little impatient but then immediately picked up his courage and began to advertise himself like a street hawker. Math and science homework for just 50p. Math and science homework for just 50p. The continuous loud sound grabbed the attention of all nearby students who looked at Loki with amusement. Loki's bizarre patterned oversized shirt and pants along with his malnourished frame made people mistake him for even younger than he already was, but they displayed nothing other than a small amount of pity as they walked away from him and went into the school. After a little while though, 2 boys trotted away from their group of friends and walked to the bench Loki was sitting on, scaring him slightly since they resembled Ludwig and his gang, especially their wickedly arranged teeth. But Loki kept his calm and faced them with a fearless business smile. How can a twat like you help us out with our homeworks? One of the boys asked, but before Loki could answer he was interrupted by the second boy. James, you fool, maybe he has the solutions already and he just needs to copy it for us. Oh, you could be right, Clark. I know everything and I'm always right. Then why didn't you finish your homework earlier? Because I knew the Allfather would grant us this wonderful opportunity today. Allfather. Loki noticed, but remained silent as he contemplated, a clue or just a child enamored by myth? James shook his head at his friend's shamelessness and looked down at Loki to ask him a question once again. Is he right, twat? Loki was angry for a second since he felt insulted when James called him a twat, but then considered the phrase, the customer is always right, and spread a big smile on his face. Of course. You are obviously right. I have all the solutions already. Oh, where is it? Clark asked, not seeing anything around Loki that would contain the answers to their problems. In here, Loki said, pointing at his head. James and Clark both lifted their eyebrows as they looked at the confident and smiling Loki with skepticism. What do you think, Clark? I still think the Heavenly Father has given us this wonderful opportunity so that Mrs. Smith doesn't send us out of class to hold buckets as punishment today. I see. But what if he's wrong? I'm sure we can beat him up and take back our 50 pence from him. Loki's sweat dropped at the blatant call for violence, but he was confident in his knowledge so that such a situation wouldn't arise again. Getting beaten up once by Ludwig and his gang had left a remarkable impression, literally. But to make his customers happier, Loki gave them a personalized offer. I can promise you to do it for 25p each if you promise me to spread the word around your class that I was the one that finished your homework. James and Clark looked at each other and communicated nonverbally before simultaneously taking out books from their bags and handing it over to Loki. They both opened their books and pointed at the homework Loki had to solve for them. So one math geometry problem and a few science questions about the powerhouse of the cell. Easy. Solving the questions as quickly as he could while trying to copy the handwriting of the two so that the teachers wouldn't raise suspicion, Loki finished the 2 homework with great speed and efficiency. Handing over the books back, Loki said, I will be here at the same time tomorrow, you can find me if something goes wrong in it. James and Clark looked over at Loki with surprise since he had finished their homework in under 5 minutes. Did we just pay for work that we could have done in 5 minutes? Damn. Breaking them out of their surprise was Loki, who held his hand out to collect the money that he was now owed. Do you trust him, Clark? The Allfather never lies. Then why don't you pay? I'll pay you back tomorrow. I promise. Quote. Okay. James paid Loki for the both of them with a single 50p coin, and he quickly thanked the two boys and left from there, lest they change their minds about this payment and beat him up to take it back from him. Looking at the coin in his hand as he walked back down the street to steal a bus ride back home, Loki exclaimed inside his mind and giggled like a mad scientist who had achieved the planned result of his great project. Ha 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 ha. I don't need to steal anymore. I'm a genius. Everything is going according to Kikaku. I wonder if Elaine's woken up already. Don't worry, little sis. Your big brother is about to bring home something you'll love. I should also bring sis tomorrow to move closer to the school. I don't want to have to keep paying Ludwig and his gang protection money. I hope there is a similarly empty plot of land nearby where we can remake our shack. Tough life ahead. But Elaine's smile makes it all fun. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Walking to a famous store that he had only seen in his memories earlier and had never been to in this world, Loki joined the queue with a bright smile. W.C. Donald's. Many people in the line sent curious glances Loki's way, but he ignored them to save himself from any confrontation that might occur due to his status as a poor homeless orphan. But everyone seemed to be stifling a peal of laughter as they caught glances at Loki's clothes. Why is everyone looking at me like I'm a clown? I'm wearing such cool clothes. Did they not like this fashion style? Loki's shirt was a bright neon pink color with the picture of a small cartoonish budgie painted on it in neon yellow. Did they not know who Bungie the Budgerigar is? Hey, kid, where is your mommy? One of the adults close to Loki in the line asked. My mommy is in the house, good sir. Loki responded as politely as he could without rousing anyone's suspicion. Haha, is that so? Nod nod. Being a child pays off. Everyone believes you no matter what. Loki thought. What do you want today then? The older man asked. I want a patty burger for me and my sister. Loki said with a wide smile. Is that so? Then how old is your sister? She's turning 4 next month. Loki exclaimed, excited that someone was talking about the greatness of his sister with him. I can see you love your sister deeply. This is going to be the first time Elaine will eat W.C. Donald's. That is why I'm so excited. Is that so? Yes. Then I wish you luck so that your sister likes what you take for her. Thank you, good sir. With a nod, the gentleman ended the conversation as Loki reached the front of the line during this time. What's your name, young man? The receptionist asked. Loki. Ooh, that's a unique name. It is. So what would you like, Loki? 1 quarter pounder with a side of French fries, please. All right, that will be 50p. Can I interest you in any of the drinks we have? No, that will be all. All right. Thank you for purchasing at W.C. Donald's. You may collect your order at the collection counter 2 windows down the right. I hope you choose to eat with us once again. Thank you. I will. Loki was overjoyed at how easy it was to buy food in this day and age when things seemed so cheap. So he patiently moved to wait near the next counter for his order to be called. It wasn't long before Loki's name was called and he walked up to the counter to pick his quarter pounder up. Looking at the quarter pounder and the few French fries inside the cover, Loki was overjoyed. Elaine is gonna love these. Loki rushed home and soon found himself in the shack where he spotted Elaine playing by herself with a few dolls Loki had stolen for her. Elaine, I'm back. Big Bewather. Haha. Look, I got something special for you. What is it, Big Bewather? Ha. I will only give it to you if you tell me something. What? Who's the best Big BW other there is? You are. Haha. Thank you. Loki smiled proudly and handed the cover with the quarter pounder and French fries to Elaine for her to attack. Elaine quickly opened the package and smiled with bright eyes as she spotted the quarter pounder inside the cover. Big Bewather. You went to W.C. Donald's. Yes. Your Big Bewather went to W.C. Donald's today to get you your lunch. Thank you, Big Bewather. No worries, my cutie pie sister deserves the best. Hee hee. Elaine and Loki then shared half of the quarter-pounder and each had some, with Elaine still eating the larger share. While she tried to eat less by arguing about having grown up, Loki didn't listen and fed her a little more. They also had to save a little bit so that they could still eat during the night. It wasn't long before Elaine burped a little and slowly grew drowsy before falling asleep on Loki's legs. With the food remaining, can I perform the luck enhancement ritual? I only have 3 ingredients, a leftover burger, French fries and sauce. What can I use as my 4th sacrifice? Water. Surely the celestial worthy of heaven and earth won't be angry if I use water. I mean, everyone like a good glass of water after a fresh meal. Loki shivered a little at the thought of making the celestial worthy of heaven and earth angry, so he decided to think of something else. Or can I just use the burger patty as a separate food in the ritual? Yes, it's better to use the patty as a separate food sacrifice for the ritual. Loki smoothly put Elaine's head on a folded cloth to cushion her while she slept and moved around the shack to quickly place different foods in each corner. A burger bread in the first corner, a patty in the next, French fries in the third and sauce packets in the fourth. Taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Loki began the ritual, taking his first step counterclockwise to form a square while chanting, "The immortal Lord of heaven and earth for blessings." Taking his second step he said, "The Sky Lord of heaven and earth for blessings." With his third step, he said, "The exalted Thirk of heaven and earth for blessings." And with his final one, he concluded with, "The celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings." Before Loki could close his eyes and wait for 5 minutes in silence for the ritual to finish, a cacophony of whispers, wails and screams graced his ears. The screams and wails almost fried his brain, but the shock of it all left him momentarily discombobulated. He felt like he was thrust into the same crimson light that had stained his room on the day he was transmigrated. He tried to move, but the air felt heavy and thick, as if resisting every action he was making. In mere moments, Loki found himself separated from his body as he was yanked out of his head uncomfortably and thrust into a sea of endless calm. Slowly opening his eyes, Loki found something that only made him excited. "I'm above the gray fog." Loki spoke with excitement and finality as he recognized the place he was currently standing in. Several crimson stars dotted the endless gray fog as Loki made sure not to touch any of them, since he didn't want to summon any unknown beyonders of this world without information about them yet. I can't be as good as Klein at pretending to be a sequence zero true god with how different the things here are. I must exercise caution, otherwise, I might end up dead or worse before I even start my new life. Who knows which god might try to rope me into their plans or corrupt me to plan a deity's decent, or worse. Loki immediately stirred the gray fog with a thought by exploiting the slight connection between him and the Saphira castle, and caused a great white Olympian hall to appear along with a long thick golden marble table in its center. The table molted to release shallow amounts of gray fog from its edges, shrouding its ever-shifting inlays and designs in a foggy layer of mystery. 22 matching chairs appeared in their place beside the table. Each had the symbol of one of the major arcana of the tarot cards on their back sides, inlaid with gold to give them a shimmering glow. The omnipresent light in the boundless area above the gray fog dimmed and turned crimson, giving the place an eerie vibe, making it hard to see anything beyond a few meters other than a silhouette. "It looks good. Should I hide it though and recreate it when I, accidentally, summon more people by touching the crimson stars like Klein?" Sure, why not, but I'll do it before I leave." Loki sat down on the chair closest to him, the first wing chair of the table that had the mark of a dragon on its back. Is it my subconscious choice to sit on the chair with the mark of the justice pathway? Or is the Saphira castle trying to tell me something about my pathway? Am I going to become a spectator? It's not like I have any special attachment to the pathway. I would prefer the Fool's pathway or the Error pathway the most instead of the Spectator pathway. Even the Door pathway sounds like more fun. Conjuring a paper and a pen to write with, Loki wrapped his fingers around the edges of the marble table, shifting deep into thoughts as he thought about the things that had recently happened to him and wrote them down. I was sent into a new world during an eclipse when the moon turned crimson. I occupied the body of a young child who is 10 years old. Rather, instead of occupied, it would be right to say fused. I don't know the right words, transmigrated perhaps. I will only be able to seek the truth of this matter when I have spirit vision and am able to inspect my soul in a closer fashion by comparing it to others. But to gain any good spirit vision I need to first turn into a Beander of one of the future-telling pathways, like the Fool pathway or the Wheel of Fortune pathway that are good at divinations. Now that I have the Saphira Castle, the law of Beander characteristics convergence should attract the Fool, Door and Error pathways to me. But shouldn't the celestial worthy of heaven and earth have already planned to give me Beander characteristics from the 9th sequence to the 1st sequence to make me lose control and succumb to his will? Is someone protecting me, like the Evernight goddess did for Klein? But who? Does this world even have Beanders in the first place? In my memories, no churches exist for the gods of various Beander pathways. How do they keep themselves from losing control if they do not have any followers or anchors? Or perhaps all of them are just king of angels like Aemon and have not become true gods yet. Too early to say. I must somehow come in contact with a Beander gathering circle to know more about this world and its Beanders. Dropping the pen onto the table and leaning back into his chair, Loki relaxed with a soft sigh as he looked at the paper in front of him filled with notes. I should leave. Leaving my body unprotected when Ludwig and his gang could find me and attack me at any given time would not be good after all. He stood up and vanished the large hall and table along with chairs, leaving the space above the gray fog in the pristine condition it existed in before he had arrived here. And with but a thought, Loki was back in his body, leaving the gray fog and the crimson stars within it undisturbed as it had probably remained for centuries prior. Opening his eyes, Loki looked at Elaine, who was fast asleep, and sat down to lean on the shack wall and take some rest himself. Being in the Saphira had taken some energy from him and had left him spent. After I get up, I'll try going to churches nearby and see if I can sniff out any Beander shenanigans. Though I doubt if it is going to be as simple as that. Looking at the back of his hand, Loki rubbed the small tattoo of the 4 squares that had popped up on it after doing the celestial worthy of heaven and earth ritual. The tattoo was like the one Klein got, and Loki had expected it. Soon, with a soft snore, Loki fell asleep while leaning on the rickety walls of the shack with Elaine. Getting up in a couple of hours, Loki watched the sun reach the lower part of the sky, so he woke up Elaine. Get up, princess. HNGG. Wakey wakey. Today we will go to the church. NYA. Hee, wake up, little princess. Come. Loki tickled her as she curled up to protect herself from her brother's relentless assaults. Elaine slowly roused from her slumber and pouted cutely as she looked at Loki, who was looking down at her while smiling. Come, let's go. Okie, big BW other. Good. Holding Loki's hands, Elaine waddled along with him as they strolled through the streets, with Loki slowly winding down the paths towards the church nearby. The church was a small chapel with a large cross on the wall towards the altar. Loki and Elaine sat down in the aisle for a few minutes, but except for the serene silence within its walls, Loki did not spot anything else happening within the boundaries of the church. No people were walking in and out of some secret entrance in the chapel, and no people were going into the sanctuary to vanish into an underground tunnel connected to an unknown detective agency. Sigh, if it was going to be this easy to find out about Beanders, I'm sure everyone would have learnt about them till now. I don't have any idea about where else I can look for other than these churches. I guess that's it for today. I should probably leave with Elaine to search for some new house we can live in to escape from Ludwig and his gang. Come on, little princess, let's go search for a new home. New home? Elaine asked with heartbreaking sadness as tears appeared in her eyes. Loki was shocked for a second, but then he realized why Elaine acted like this. Don't worry, sis, this time I will take all the toys along with us to the new home so that you don't have to tell them goodbye. Loki said quickly, patting the little girl's head, and soothed her sadness. Pinky promise, BW other. Yes, Pinky promise. Don't cry. I promise to take all of it with us. Okie. Scouting around for a new unused plot, Loki spent the next few days performing the same routine. Get up, Go to school and solve homework for various students, buy burgers at W.C. Donald's, eat food with Elaine, and then search for a new plot to build their home together. Loki had a few categories he wanted to match while looking for the new plot. He wanted it to be close to the schools. He wanted it to be in an unused location that could be hidden easily. And finally, he wanted it to be close to supermarkets so that he could steal things from their dumpsters, like clothes and accessories for convenience. Well, the south is a no-go since that's where all the gangs are. North and west are a no-go since they are too far. East it is. Trotting off onto another journey of searching for plots to shift their shack to, Loki walked hand in hand with Elaine as they scanned the houses in East London for any area to live in. Loki stopped suddenly as he noticed an oddity in one of the homes in the wall of houses that lined his sides. "What happened, Big Bewather?" Elaine asked, cutely tilting her head to the side to look at Loki. "I think we've found our home." Loki smiled and walked along with Elaine to the dark and dingy house that stood precariously on its last foundations to find out if he was right. Knock knock. Is anyone there? With a sharp rap of his knuckles, Loki knocked on the fragile half-burnt doors and wondered if anyone would answer him. Seeing the everlasting silence reign supreme, Loki pushed open the door and boorishly stepped inside the tattered house. As expected, there's no one in here. Walking in a little bit more, Loki observed the house for any signs of recent use and found none. No needles, empty bottles or even strange smells remained. The house wasn't perfect, mind you, since it was dominated by the smell of burnt wood, but Loki didn't mind. Although most of the house had burned down, some of the rooms appeared livable. "This place will do well, little sis. But it's so dark. Manny and Gunji won't like being in the dark for so long. Let's go upstairs." Loki walked ahead and Elaine quietly followed as they reached the topmost floor of the double-story house. The top room was well lit with sunlight pouring into it from the large window on its side and the roof which had holes in it. Loki looked at the roof and frowned since it would be a problem when it rained, but beggars couldn't be choosers and Elaine seemed to like it too since she had already begun telling Loki how she would arrange her toys on the shelves here. "Big Bewather. I can build a castle for Delphi and Corey here. Yes, we'll live in this place for now, let's bring all your toys here." Yeah. Walking back to their home, Loki and Elaine rested for the night, except Elaine couldn't sleep much at all because she was so excited, and early the next morning, after Loki was back from solving children's homework, they collectively bound all of Elaine's toys in a large cloth and carried it to their new home. "Big Bewather," Elaine shouted as she ran around the house jumping in joy at the new roof over their heads, but Loki quickly reminded her to keep her voice down. "Elaine, shish. Remember, we will only win the game against our neighbors if we keep absolutely quiet." "Hee, okie big BW other," Elaine whispered with a finger on her lips. Although this house has burnt down, I doubt the neighbors would take kindly to two kid tramps living in the house. Better we keep quiet and don't get caught." Loki looked around the house and nodded in satisfaction since this would do for now until they were either evicted by other goons or discovered by the owner or their neighbors. "Come on, Elaine, let's sleep. Don't want to be awake the whole night again." Elaine nodded and moved down to the room where they had found an old mattress, snuggled close to each other and drifted off to a pleasant sleep. Getting up the next day, Loki once again sneaked onto a bus to go to the school, and after reaching there, he sat down on the bench that had become his go-to spot during the morning. After a few days of repeatedly asking students to advertise for him and doing work at half the price, today was finally the day a group arrived in front of him without having to shout like a street hawker. "Can I interest you in my services, sirs and madams?" Loki said politely with a business smile on his face. The students immediately opened their books to ask Loki about solving the homework for them. "So one math class 7, one science class 10 and one math class 10. Will that be all?" Loki said like it was no big deal. "Yes, that will be all," a boy said, handing over the books to Loki. Loki began solving everything, and as he did so with total absorption, he did not notice a tall man with an English mustache arriving behind the group of kids and peering at him from above. Looking at Loki solving the problems in an unorthodox manner, The man was unable to contain his excitement as he immediately pushed the children aside and moved to the front to observe Loki's answers. Professor. The children were startled and they all pulled their books from Loki and rushed away, leaving Loki confused and a little angry since they hadn't paid him for the work he had finished. As Loki lifted his head up to gaze at the source of the problem, he found the tall British man looking at him with adoration and felt a little scared. Is he here to kidnap me? Perhaps he is a well-known child molester. Maybe that's why the kids ran away from him. Loki covered himself as best as he could and tried to move away from the British man, but before he could fully escape, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. No! Loki cried as he did his best to push away the man, but his iron grip didn't let him escape. Young man, calm down. I come here with good intentions. HHHEELLLLPPP. Loki did his best to shout, but after a second the man blocked Loki's mouth, not allowing a single sound to come out. Bite. Ouch. You're one rude boy. The man complained, but he still held Loki down with his other hand. Seeing that the man wasn't trying to do anything other than stop him from running away, Loki calmed down a little so that he could reassess the man properly himself. Who are you? Loki finally asked. I'm John Elton. I'm the math professor at Stonewall High. Loki couldn't believe his ears, and so, his mouth hung a little loose from the sudden revelation. Am I in trouble? Loki asked calmly. No, young man, you are not in trouble. In fact, I wanted to ask you who taught you to solve these problems. I learnt them myself. Loki responded almost instantly. I see. Could you take me to your parents? They are dead, Loki said with a little apprehension as the man's eyes widened with worry. Is this a coincidence arranged by fate? The man thought with some excitement. While Loki's thoughts were something else entirely. Perhaps this man is a Beyonder and is here to induce me into the path of Beyonders. Like Dunsmith did to Klein. Let's see where this goes. Both concluded simultaneously. Why do you want to know about my parents anyway? Loki asked to keep the conversation going and to move away from the depressing shift that had occurred. Ah, never mind. Do you have any brothers and sisters? Why do you want to know? Loki asked again, trying to glean more about what the man was trying to do here by disrupting his business. I want to adopt you, the man stated with an excited glint in his eyes. Huh. Loki felt a little shocked and his mind slipped into a flurry of thoughts. Is this the work of a Beyonder? This seems very much like a suspicious scam. Does he run a child trafficking ring? Why would a random person want to adopt a kid they just met? I don't believe you, Loki said with a straight face. What about it don't you believe? The man asked with a strange expression. Shouldn't the little boy be overjoyed that he will be adopted? Why would a man adopt a child out of nowhere unless they are thinking of doing something suspicious? Loki complained. Why would I as a respectable member of society try to do anything to him? Ah, I forgot to tell you the reason. Is he really Dunsmith? Quote. Loki stayed silent, indicating the man to continue explaining. The reason I want to adopt you is because your genius must be laid bare for the world to witness. Not many kids are as smart as you are. Perhaps you could even find your place at Oxford. Loki felt a little shocked that something like this had happened and his mind raced 100 horses trying to figure out a way out of all this. I am a normal kid transmigrated into the body of someone a little younger. I'm not a genius. What the hell? How did it lead to such an outcome? But then a thought arose in Loki's mind and caused him to seriously ponder about what was happening. Elaine won't have to worry about anything if she gets adopted by someone. If I am truly destined to become a force in the Beyonder world, Elaine would have to suffer just because of me. She would either need to always remain hidden or become a Beyonder herself so that she can stay safe as my closest and dearest. And if she ever got to know that it was because of her that I lost my life, I don't think she could forgive herself. Isn't this the better solution? Loki looked at Elton and his eyes took on a contemplative glimmer. What do you think? Elton asked Loki once again with a soft worried smile on his face. Give me some time to think. Loki nodded and caused Elton to widen his eyes and look at him, but then he held himself back and nodded in response. Good. Such things must not be decided on hastily. You are truly a genius. Elton commented. But Loki only extended his hand and opened his palm in response. Huh, what happened? You drove away my customers. Compensate me, Loki said with a smooth smile on his face. The man felt shocked for a second, but with a silly laugh, reluctantly pulled out a 5-pound note, causing Loki's eyes to widen. Holy cow, that's 5 pounds. 10 meals. I already feel like I should join him. Loki took the money that was handed to him and became ecstatic as he left towards the nearest W.C. Donald's so that he could get some food for Elaine and himself. Loki skipped to the W.C. Donald's and bought 2 meal sets for both of them and reached back home with a smile on his face. I guess I can splurge a little. Hee, I'm sure Elaine will love that we both have our own meals now. Big Bewather, Elaine shouted from the top floor as soon as she saw Loki from the broken window. Ha ha, come down Elaine, look at what I've gotten for you. Elaine carefully stepped down the stairs and walked over to Loki with a beautiful smile. What did you bring, Big Bewather? Look, Loki revealed the 2 meal packages that he was holding behind his back and showed them to Elaine. Today you get 1 entire burger for yourself and Big Brother also gets 1 for himself. But unexpectedly Elaine instantly became teary-eyed. What happened, little sis? Loki asked, rushing to hold his sister closer to himself and comfort her. Big Bewather does not want to eat with me anymore. Haha, why are you worried about such a simple thing? Let's eat together and share 1 burger again. Alright, Sharing food with Elaine, the 2 of them filled their stomach by eating the French fries and the burger and spent the rest of the evening gazing at the stars and planets in the sky. As the 2 of them fell asleep, Loki mentally decided what his response to Elton would be tomorrow. I can't compromise the life of my little sister just because I want to become a Beander. Didn't Klein also find a way for his brother and sister to gain financial compensation after his death? I should also make plans for little sis to live safely in case I die. Yawn. Good night, little sis. Good night, Big Bewather. Waking up the next morning, Loki left for school in the same way as before, except when he arrived there he was confused. Why are there so many coppers here? Did something happen? I'll come back tomorrow since I don't know what the cops might do if they find out about my services. But as soon as Loki turned to go back since he had enough money for food today, he was met with a cop who was standing right behind him. Got you, the cop said, placing a hand on Loki's shoulder and grabbing him so that he couldn't escape. What are you doing? Leave me alone. Let go. You might want to hear this, the cop calmly explained. Oh, Loki asked with weariness as he calmed himself down a little. Is it something related to my business? Are they going to arrest me because I don't have a permit or something? John Elton died yesterday, the cop calmly said. What does do what? Loki shouted, attracting the attention of the other coppers in the area. Yes. He seemed excited about adopting you, at least the staff said he was really excited. We got your description from the students. But what happened to him? To Mr. Elton. This is an assumption still, but we assume in his excitement he had a little heart attack which caused him to pass away at the school after it was closed yesterday. What the heck? Loki's head started spinning and thoughts began to sprout in his mind as he thought about the various things that could have caused this issue. Coincidence? I think not. Was it the work of a Beander? Perhaps a spectator is looking at me and making fun of my life by controlling it somehow. Can you let me go? I'm not in a good mood, Loki said with a soft frown on his face. Although he wasn't deeply connected to Elton, the man's act of kindness had made him a little sorry for him. Unfortunately or fortunately for you, we can't leave you yet, the cop said, causing Loki to shift his full focus onto him. What? Why? We need to put you into an orphanage, or a new home. We can't just let you wander around. You've got quite a good head on your shoulders if I have heard anything, so you shouldn't be worried about not being chosen by a family looking to adopt. Loki's eyes widened as soon as the words left the copper's mouth, causing him shock and some relief. Thank God I didn't tell him about Elaine yesterday. Loki sat silently on a bench in the police station as the adults figured out what to do. It's busy, Loki thought as he watched the police officers swarm around the office in a seemingly arbitrary order, moving to finish the tasks they had started, with a definite drag to their feet. I need to get out of here. Preferably before they decide where I'm supposed to go. I don't want to have to spend money traveling back, and Elaine must be worrying about why I haven't returned home yet. Suddenly a deep rumbling voice spoke from beside him, pulling him from his machinations. What are ye in for? Magic. Huh, magic. Loki turned to look at the man beside him. The man's hair and beard didn't separate. It felt like he had a thick mane that went all around his face and neck. He was dressed in clothes made of cheap coarse fabric with nothing else to keep him decent except a small towel acting as a handkerchief in his hand. Apart from his height, which could only be defined as gigantic, the most striking feature about him were the chains that glimmered all around his body. Probably being used to bind him up. Loki guessed, since a large ring on his neck was connected to the thick rings around his wrists and ankles with the help of a thick iron chain that seemed impossible to break. But all the rings and chains, when compared to the gigantic man's size, looked like thin threads you would see glimmer in a spider web. Is this magic, related to Beyonder stuff, or is the man just cuckoo? Just to make it a little fun to talk to such a man, to play around and find out if he was as reasonable as he seemed, Loki said the following instead of clearing up the misunderstanding. Used magic to prank a friend. Knew it. The man nodded as if he'd won a bet with himself, rattling his chains in the process. A strange silence took in the atmosphere as they acknowledged each other's presence, and then the man spoke again. How did ye do it? Good, ol leg locker curse. Leg locker curse. Which Beyonder pathway would give you the ability to lock someone's legs? It is quite the practical skill though. Maybe I can check if he has knowledge about the various Beyonder pathways. Yes, that seems like the best plan of action. With the beginnings of a plan forming in his head, Loki answered the man with an intelligent and calculated smile on his face. Nah, I turned his dress animate. Ah, Professor McGonagall's classes. That's a good way too, I suppose. If your transfiguration was good, I suppose she'd like it too, the gruff man acknowledged. Oh, he wasn't scared. Is he just cuckoo? Or is this Professor McGonagall someone from the Rose School of Thought? Are the Rose School of Thought in this world not corrupted by her? What are you in for? Loki asked with an interested smile. Beat up 12 people in a bar. That's surprisingly normal. Oh, what did they do? Call you Bubbles? Worse, they tried to steal me dragon's egg. Unfortunately, I broke me egg by accidentally sitting on it. That's why I beat them up. Dragons are alive. What the heck? Why haven't I seen them? Wait, I can get the Beyonder ingredients from him if he trades in exotic animals. I understand. I'd be mad too if these magicless fools tried to steal my things. Loki nodded solemnly. Yes, muggles can sometimes be a little hard to handle too, though Professor Dumbledore doesn't think so. Muggles. If I wanted things like the dragon's eggs or perhaps even their brains, where could I meet you? I'm not supposed to say this, especially not to a student. Professor Dumbledore would be disappointed in me, but you could try your hand at the Nocturne Alley. I visit often. You'd be fine if it were only the outskirts. With the comfortable silence settling in, Loki calculatedly whispered to the old man. Could you help me a little bit? Help? What kind? My little sis must be worried that I'm not back home. I'm the only one she has, you see. Loki said with a pitying smile on his face that elicited a gruff from the man. I understand, you don't need to worry about it. What do you suggest? The friendly giant asked with a humorous undertone. Could you create a distraction so that I could slip by? Although I'm not supposed to be using magic, I think I can make a small exception. I'm sure Professor Dumbledore would be proud. Thank you very much. I will remember to pay you back in some way when we meet again. Loki excitedly accepted the offer, since not only did he want to get away from the place, he also wanted to see what Beyonder pathway the man belonged to by seeing him use his abilities. Haha. Don't worry, I can do this much for a student. Student? Where does he think I study? Loki thought, bewildered. Is there a Beyonder school in this world? The gentle giant then pulled what seemed like an umbrella that was hidden in his boots and winked at Loki. It looked comically small in his hands. Under Loki's astonished look, The giant then swung his umbrella and caused a stack of papers on the table of a desk worker to catch on fire. What the heck? He's of the apprentice or the seer pathway or red priest. And what was that umbrella? A prop for acting. Ah. The desk worker instantly noticed the fire and stood up to try and put it out using his jacket, but similar fires began to spring up all around the office as the giant waved his stick. Loki sat on the bench baffled as he watched the already busy police station turn into a mess, filled with the screams and shouts of various people all running either towards sources of water or fire extinguishers to stop the fires. You should leave, the giant whispered, shaking Loki out of the stunned state he was in. Yes. Loki quickly nodded thankfully to the giant and made his way towards the exit. I will think about this matter later, first I need to buy some burgers and then reach home. Reaching the road, Loki quickly made way towards the nearest W.C. Donald's, bought food for Elaine and himself, and rushed back home. Big Bewather. Elaine, who was waiting at the stairs leading up to the door, shouted loudly as soon as she saw Loki enter the street and ran up to him to hug him. You were late, Big Bewather. Haha, thank you for waiting for me, Elaine. I was late because some police caught me. I will make sure I'm not late again. Promise. Big Bewather is a bad boy. Elaine asked, holding onto Loki's hands. Hee. Number. Police caught Big Brother to take him away from Elaine. Big Bewather is going away. Elaine asked, shocked. Holy bad. No, don't worry, Big Brother is going to stay with you forever. Loki nodded with certainty, patting Elaine's head softly, but inwardly he was worried how he would embark on his Beander journey with Elaine hanging onto him. After Elaine and Loki finished eating, Elaine immediately slept since she hadn't slept in the afternoon and was sleepy, allowing Loki to think about what had happened at the police station earlier. Which pathway was he from? Red Priest? Or the Fool pathway? Maybe the Apprentice? I remember both those pathways allow a person to work with fire, while the Apprentice pathway had the sequence 8 tricksmotter who could possibly pull off such a trick. Oh, or maybe that umbrella was a mystical item with those abilities. Perhaps he was a low sequence Beander and was using a mid-sequence item belonging to the Red Priest or the Fool sequence to produce those flames. Loki rubbed the 4 squares tattoo that had appeared on the back of his hand for a while and slowly slipped into a short nap himself. Today has been stressful. I'll go check if I can do the homework at other schools tomorrow, but I doubt the police wouldn't keep an eye out for me. Perhaps I can lay low for a few days and work with the money I already have. And then when things cool down, go back to solving homework again. We'll see what happens later. That's the future me's problem. Now all I need is a good sleep. Good night, Elaine. Voodnai bwode, Elaine mumbled, already sleeping. Loki stood in shock as he looked at the scene in front of him. What in the world? 3 boys and a police officer all remained flat on the ground, splattered like a puddle of water, unconscious from the tremendous force that knocked them back into the wall, each having expressions of horror marked onto their faces, their eyes rolled back and their mouths hanging open. How did this happen? Loki stood aghast as he thought back to the simple morning that had begun just like any other. Helping Elaine lay her head on a bundle of clothes, Loki woke up and readied himself for the work he had to do today. I'll go and check the school to see if the police are still keeping an eye out for me. Loki moved to the streets and sneaked onto a bus, getting down only near Stonewall High and stealthily moving while keeping an eye out for any suspicious police officers. But before he could find a police officer, Loki found a poster stuck onto the entrance wall of the school and on nearby lamp posts that demanded his full attention. Wow! Loki almost shouted out loud but forced himself to keep quiet and blend in with the students. Wanted. Arsonist. Reward £100. Loki stared at the sketch of him that was posted on the poster, flabbergasted, and immediately pulled up his shirt to cover his face to slip out of the crowd that had gathered around the area. But to his misfortune, Loki tripped on the legs of one of the students moving against him, dragging towards himself the attention of all the students around him. Ouch! Loki shouted as he crashed into the ground and caused the student population to freeze up. I'm sorry, are you alright? The boy asked as he held out his hand to help Loki up. But before he could pull himself up and rush away, one of the students shouted, "That's him. The kid on the poster." Damn. Loki tried his best and used his small frame to his advantage to push through the crowd of students, all while distracting them by making disguised shouts to distract the students into thinking he was moving elsewhere. "He's over there. No. Over here. Come here." As Loki rushed through the crowd and landed out of the encirclement, 3 kids followed him out and began to rush to catch up to him. "Sod off, you fools." Loki cursed, but that only motivated the boys further, making him run faster. Loki rushed toward a back street with his heart drumming in his chest. He jumped over small obstacles and slipped through cracked fences, hoping to put some distance between himself and the group chasing him. "Damn it. Why are you so persistent?" Loki asked when he stopped for a few seconds to catch his breath. His malnourished frame was no longer helping in this prolonged chase. His lungs felt like jugs of lava, burning everything inside his chest. Picking up the pace once again, Loki rushed toward a corner and finally reached a thin, narrow street that allowed him to put some distance between himself and his chasers, that now somehow included a police officer. But it turned out that his luck today was not the strongest. Immediately after he exited the narrow street, the 4 capturers arrived through what looked like a shortcut over someone's lawn and stood like a stop pass in front of him. Loki's face morphed into a worried frown and his heart beat at 100 miles an hour as he looked at the triumphant faces of the police officer and the 3 students. "You're going to give us those £100, right?" One of the students spoke, a student that Loki recognized. It was James, the first student he solved the homework for. "Damn, is the Evernight goddess blessing me with misfortune today? Did my streak of luck finally run out? Finally. Got you, brat. Everyone saw you running away after you set that fire. I bet you didn't think we'd catch you today. What does that mean? How does running away prove I set the fire? I was just running away to avoid being burnt down. I don't want to be separated from Elaine." Loki's frown turned deeper while his heart beat faster, and just when the 3 students and the police officer encircled him, Loki's anxiety reached its peak. "Stop!" Loki shouted with his eyes shut in fear. Thud asterisk thud asterisk thud asterisk thud. Loki felt a wave of energy flow out of his body, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the scene in front of him, aghast. The police officer and the 3 students had all hit the walls behind them and collapsed with clear shock etched onto their faces. What in the world? Loki's mouth hung loosely open as he watched the aftermath of his unintended attack. "There will be some leeway for me because this is self-defense, right? Are they alive?" Loki wondered with a faint whisper and moved closer to each one of them to check their breaths. Sigh. It seems like nothing major happened. Leaving the people chasing him behind with a slightly guilty expression, Loki left the area and moved towards home after pickpocketing the police officer for 50 pence. It wasn't like he had planned to pickpocket the police officer, it was because Loki felt he deserved some money for psychological damages from the entire incident. As Loki rode on the bus after sneaking himself in like always, his thoughts strayed back to the moment he defended himself. What was that? Am I already a Beander? Perhaps my father was a Beander and he used my mother as a way to separate excess characteristics to give birth to me. Sigh. Is this even about Beanders at this point? Or is it an entirely different world? Maybe that umbrella that man used was a wand. It makes more sense if it's magic. But I don't know about any magical series. Damn, now I have to work blind with everything here. Loki was sure he was the one who did it though, because as soon as his chasers were thrown back into the walls he felt the energy leaving his body and he felt exhausted. After a while of lampooning, Loki reached home and had food with Elaine, distracted throughout, but he still did his best to pay attention to Elaine explaining what she did today with her stuffed toys. After Elaine was asleep, Loki finally decided to try and replicate what had happened earlier in the day. How did I do that though? I just wanted to stop them from catching me. Is it some telekinetic energy-based attack or something? Let's try levitating a feather or something lighter for now. Loki picked up a small feather that had entered the room and began to focus on it with all the energy he could muster. But the feather didn't even quiver. Damn, that giant man made it look so simple. How did he light things on fire if this is just telekinetic energy? Does everyone have different abilities? Or maybe the intent matters? Let's try. Focusing on the feather once again, Loki began to imagine the feather hovering a few centimeters above the ground, and to his surprise and shock an invisible energy emitted from him and the feather began to hover a few centimeters above the ground. What in the world? And immediately after a few seconds the feather floated back down and left Loki exhausted, gasping for air. This is going to be huge if I can control it properly. I wonder how high I can take this. Can I become as strong as Klein using this system of magic? Well, at least I can try. On the next day, with a scarf covering his head, Loki peeked around the corner and watched the group of police officers patrolling the area around the school. Sigh, the cops are everywhere. What do I do? Loki held the 50-pence coin he had stolen from the officer in his hands with guilt reflected in his eyes. Is this the only way left? Perhaps I could find a different school. No, I'm sure even those places have posters of me around them by now. Damn, why did they think I started the fire? With a frustrated look on his face hidden behind his scarf, Loki walked over to the bus stop and sneaked away silently as if he had never been on the scene in the first place. Arriving at the W.C. Donald's, Loki bought a meal and began to trot towards his house. Big Bewather! Elaine shouted happily as she saw Loki coming towards the house. Loki lifted up the light little girl and pulled her closer towards himself into a tight hug. How are you, Elaine? Loki asked with a loving gaze. I am fine, BW other. Do you wanna have a burger from W.C. Donald's? As Loki and Elaine ate the food for the day, Loki was lost in thought as he debated with himself, trying to make a decision that would change how he lived for the foreseeable future. After he finished lunch with Elaine, Loki left the house once again, after she fell asleep, and moved by foot towards the closest tube station he knew. Loki looked at his hands and grew even more worried after he noticed them shiver from tension. All right, Loki, you've done this several times before, your instinct should kick in. Loki rushed into the crowd of people trying to board the metro and fell in pace with them as he attempted to bring out the instinct from performing this action for the last 9 years. It's the same body, I'm sure it has muscle memory. Slipping out a razor blade into his hand, Loki swiped the back pocket of the man in front of him and became surprised when it worked perfectly the first time round. Damn, it works. Loki put some pressure on the man's bulge and slipped out the wallet in it. All the while, the man did not realize that anything was happening to his pockets. Swerving a little, Loki slipped out of the stream of people walking into the metro and opened the wallet for him to see what was gained in the form of spoils. 230 pounds. This surely is a lucrative way to earn money. Loki thought with a frown on his face as his hands trembled holding the large amount of money. Harris Letterman. Johnson Real Estate Firm. Tossing the wallet into a garbage bin after taking all the money from it, Loki walked back with his hands in his pockets as he continued to walk home. Sigh, I didn't want to become a thief, and there's no way to climb higher while doing this job. Unless I steal and sell stuff from homes. But who will I sell it to anyway? The police are hot onto me and Ludwig's gang would love to cooperate with them if it meant undermining me. What do I do? Looking at the 230 pounds in his eyes with guilt, Loki felt terrible. Does this qualify as hard-earned money? Loki decided to sleep to take his mind off things, but after lying down beside Elaine and even after hugging her fluffy figure, Loki couldn't put himself to sleep. The name, Harris Letterman, kept resonating in his head as the face of the man floated around and kept him awake. Damn, why do I suddenly have insomnia? Standing up, Loki left back to the tube station and began searching for the man who had boarded the train in the afternoon. If he isn't here, I'll keep the money to myself. Yes, if he isn't here searching for it, that means he doesn't need it. And to his luck or misfortune, he spotted the man frantically searching around the underground station, through the crowd of people, for his wallet. Loki felt a sigh of relief escape his lips as he watched the man look around for his wallet from the top of the stairs leading to the tube station. With a quick skip in his steps, Loki picked up the wallet from the trash can he had tossed it into, filled it with all the money he had stolen and walked back to the man. Sir, are you perhaps searching for this? Loki asked politely after patting the man lightly. "Oh, God. Thank you," the man exclaimed as he turned around and looked at what Loki was holding. With a wry smile, Loki gave the man back his wallet, and with a smile on his face, the man handed Loki back 10 pounds. "Oh no sir, I don't need this." Loki tried to be polite, but the man had none of it and thrust the money into his hands firmly. "Keep it. I can see you need some help. If you hadn't given the wallet to me, I wouldn't have been able to afford the present for my son. So thank you." "I see." Loki nodded with a smile as a wave of relief sprouted inside his chest, leaving him happy with a soft smile. "Thank you, sir. No worries. Take care now. I need to catch the stores for the present before they close." Loki politely nodded and watched as the man left for the metro. "That's a relief. What if I steal wallets and give them back to people in hopes that they give me some money? Isn't that not technically stealing? No, that's unreliable. What if I just take a little bit of the money and place the wallet back before they notice it's gone? I'll try it out and see how I feel about it." Prancing on his way back home, Loki thought about what he could now do. "I should also practice my control on my magic, so that I can do more things with it. Maybe I could stop damaging people's clothes with the razor blade if I get good enough to slip it out telepathically. Nice idea me, I'm proud of you." Reaching home, Loki fell asleep comfortably beside Elaine with a simple thought on his mind. "Beware wallets all across the tube stations, I'm going to catch you all." A soft smile graced Loki's lips and he finally fell asleep without a care in the world. Matching his rhythm to the man in front of him, Loki walked noiselessly behind him as he used his mental focus to slide out the wallet inside his pocket. 3, 2. Loki saw the man try and peek back, but the crowd's movement forced him to look ahead. One and done. Loki snatched the wallet that was floating in the air before anyone saw it, picked out 20 pounds and calmly pocketed it. As the man walked towards the automatic doors of the subway, Loki slipped the wallet back into his pants and swerved away from the crowd. "Phew. He almost noticed me. That was risky." Loki breathed a sigh of relief, but as soon as he noticed a police officer moving towards him, Loki ducked into the crowd and vanished from sight once again. Racing the exit and looking around to see if he had lost the cop, Loki truly relaxed and skipped towards the bus stop. The cops on this platform are also becoming more aware. Are people reporting the pickpocketing? Although I take only a single note of the least denomination in their wallets, it seems this is not enough to evade their senses. Well, I guess it was time to change stations anyway. It had been a month since Loki had begun stealing, or more accurately pickpocketing, from people. Much of his initial reluctance toward the profession had worn down after he turned into a repeat offender, but he still felt a little bad for stealing from someone every day. So he did a little something to take off his guilt. He sometimes donated food to a nearby orphanage, always anonymous, but still he did it. Over the course of the month, Loki visited the orphanage 3 times, gathered some extra money he could spare, and then bought ingredients for an English breakfast which he donated to the orphanages. It wasn't much, but it kept him a little guilt-free. Reaching home, Loki stealthily entered the house with soft footsteps and sneaked upon Elaine. Before she could realize what was happening, Loki covered her eyes and asked her a question. "Who's behind you, Elaine?" "Big BW other." "Yes. He, Big BWother, it's so easy. Of course it's you. This is our home." Picking up Elaine and twirling her around, Loki had a little fun with her. And after they were sufficiently tired, Loki had lunch with her. When Elaine was asleep, Loki closed his eyes to rest himself, but before he could fall asleep he felt something cold and metallic touch the back of his head. "Shout and you'll be blown away." A grumpy, cold voice spoke in barely above a whisper. The hairs on Loki's arms stood up as he realized the current situation, and he did exactly as the voice told him to. Slowly place the little girl on the floor and turn around without waking her up. Loki did as he was told, grabbed a piece of cloth, stuffed it under Elaine's head like a pillow, and slowly turned around to see the man ordering him around come into view. The man had a perpetual smirk on his face, along with a scar over his blind eye that gave him a threatening and dangerous look. His skin was unnaturally pale and stuck to his bones like vacuum-sealed plastic, while the hard stubble on his face gave him a rough and unclean look. There was a crazed look in his eyes that bordered on insanity. And his hands that held the gun were marred with scars. Loki shuddered involuntarily and felt his mood depress as he watched the smirk on the face of the man deepen. Is he not going to leave me alive since I've seen his face? I've dreamed of meeting you from up close for a long time now. The man said, breaking Loki out of his thoughts. Do I know you? Loki asked with a quiver in his tone. No, but we've crossed paths quite often recently. Quote. Loki was confused and couldn't understand how to respond to the current situation. You've been swiping in my territory as of late. The scary-looking man spoke with a glassy tone, the whispers only accentuating the sharpness in his tone. Loki's eyes widened with fear and he recognized what was happening. Damn, I shouldn't have allowed anyone to follow me back from the station. How was I supposed to know there were these many thieves in London? And how was I supposed to know there was one crazy enough to follow me home? Loki felt his chest grow heavier as he wondered if this would be the last day he was going to be alive. I still haven't become a Beander. I still haven't seen Elaine smile and laugh with other kids her age. I still haven't reached the top of the world. The darkness in the barrel of the gun mimicked what he was feeling about his future, empty, fractured and very much without light. Lucky for you, I have a plan for you. The words that graced Loki's ear felt like music in this macabre dead end of life as he looked at the intruder with the finality of hope in his eyes. Loki's eyes spelled out a simple sentence clear to anyone who would look at him. But he still spoke it out. What is it? Loki asked in a hurried manner, even forgetting to keep his voice down. It was his luck that Elaine didn't wake up. The intruder smiled coldly and then spoke in a soft cryptic manner. Meet me at Whitechapel High Street tomorrow. Loki gulped and nodded. Believe me, I will know where to find you if you try to run away. Loki nodded with even more vigor. Good. Tapping the barrel of the gun on Loki's head as a warning, the man slowly departed the way he had walked into the burnt house and vanished from Loki's sight. Sigh. Releasing a breath of relief and taking a deep breath of fresh air, Loki collapsed onto the floor of the house and tried to calm himself down. That was something else, Loki whispered. The first thing Loki did was reprimand himself for not being careful enough. I should have taken a diversion to cover my tracks. Why didn't I think of anyone following me home earlier? Sigh. At least not all is bad. At least he doesn't know I can do magic. A stern resolution formed in Loki's mind as he decided upon his next goal. I should practice magic until I'm strong enough to blow him away like I did with the police earlier. I don't want to work like a slave. Especially not under such a cruel-looking man. I doubt he will hesitate to wipe me from the face of the earth once I lose my usefulness to him. Damn it. Why is this happening? I would rather face the descent of a true god instead of feeling threatened like this. Bloody hell. Standing on the edge of the pavement, Loki scanned the street until his eyes landed on the familiar name on the signpost that stood in front of the entrance to the tube station. Whitechapel High Street. Damn, why didn't he tell me when I had to hurry? You're here. Good. The glassy voice that had now been ingrained into Loki's mind startled him from behind as he felt stick-thin fingers wrap around his shoulders. Loki jumped, scared, but when he realized that the man was not going to do anything else, he spoke while turning around to look at the man's face. Except the words he was going to say got caught up in his throat and left him with an almost inaudible groan. Huh. The man had a white full-face mask covering everything about it and his hands had white gloves that covered all his fingers. A thick black overcoat with its collars up covered his body and black pants and shoes covered everything else. Why didn't he look so protected when he met me? Loki's overactive imagination sent him spiraling into a variety of worlds that made him believe things as mundane as, perhaps he's so protected because it's cold outside. To things like, maybe he has to be so dressed up because he needs to protect himself from leaving behind any pieces of evidence when he captures his murder victims. Follow me. The man's muffled voice was enough to send shivers down Loki's spine and he followed the man with his little legs with as much speed as he could. What are you doing? The man asked after stopping suddenly on the road. What do you mean? Loki asked back. When I told you to follow me, I meant for you to keep a little distance from me, not stick to me like a tree hugger. Quote. Loki became appalled at the creative cursing but then shuddered and ran back a few steps away on the street, making sure to maintain a little distance from the man, as he continued following him. Loki tried his best to memorize the pathway the man was taking, but after a truly distressing number of turns, Loki was left lost and his only sense of direction came from the sun that was still high in the sky. Soon when the sun reached its apex around noon, Loki found himself coming to a stop after reaching a rather rich neighborhood. Standing along the fence of one of the houses he kept watch to see the man go to the door of another. Loki carefully watched the man and saw him fiddling with the door lock. It soon gave way to an open door and Loki saw the man vanishing inside after turning to give him an imperceptible nod from across the street. What did he go into that house for? Home invasion. It wasn't long before Loki saw the man coming back out of the house and with a slight nod he indicated for Loki to follow him again. He isn't carrying anything in particular. What did he steal? Something small that can be stuffed into his jacket. Gold and jewelry. As Loki followed the man again, he soon found himself in a rather decrepit part of London where Loki had no doubt he would be shanked if he walked at a slow pace or waited at a corner for too long. Reaching a run-down shack, Loki saw the man trade a bag that was stashed inside his jacket with the man behind the counter and after a few seconds, he received a bag which he picked up and began to walk away from the shack. Is this a drop-off point? As Loki followed the man, he found himself revisiting familiar streets, but before he could fully keep track of the man, he had vanished after reaching a turn. Boo! Eekk muff. Loki screamed like a girl but midway found his mouth being shut by uncomfortable and coarse gloves that bound his lips. Shish, it's me. The words didn't comfort Loki very much as he felt fear once again with his overactive imagination convincing him that the man could teleport and use magic like him instead of the logical conclusion that he just took a shortcut to appear behind him. Loki looked at the man with wide eyes but the man just knocked him on the head and caused him to shut up in pain. Loki complained with his eyes but the man ignored him and asked him a question instead. Did you see what I did today? Loki nodded. Good. Because it'll be your turn tomorrow. Quote. Loki looked at the man with wide eyes to indicate his surprise but the man had none of it and just spoke with a bland tone. Be grateful that I'm not asking you to do it without showing you how it's done. Be ready for tomorrow. Same time, same place as today. I will give you our destination when you arrive. Loki tried to complain but before he could turn around and speak, the man walked away and blended into the crowd pulling off a Batman disappearing act. What the hell? Am I Robin now? And why does he need me to do this anyway? I'm sure he isn't physically disabled or anything like it, so what's the issue here? Damn, I'm worried now. Did he have a previous helper? What happened to his previous helper? Did he shoot him in the head? Sigh, I didn't even earn any money today. I should pickpocket someone on the bus. I don't know how many days it'll take for me to earn money the new way. It is better to have a backup just in case. Loki walked home after pickpocketing on the bus by using magic and bought burgers and fries from W.C. Donald's on the way. At least my little angel's smiles are still the same. Loki thought as he looked at Elaine running towards him with a happy smile and picked her up. After they finished their lunch and Elaine fell asleep, Loki shifted through the entire day inside his head to try and learn about his new job. Won't I need to know how to pick a lock tomorrow? Well, I can try picking the locks inside this house today, but where do I get the tools to pick the lock? Loki left the house and searched around for scrap metal that was suitable to pick locks and found a few options but none seemed perfect. Even so, he did not blame his tools and began to pick the locks in the home. I need to get better by tomorrow. I don't know what other irrational things he might request of me. Maybe he killed his last sidekick because he didn't know how to pick a lock. Damn, life is unfair. Loki stood once again at Whitechapel High Street toiling away his time while fiddling with the lock-picking tools in his new jacket's pocket, wearing white gloves comically large for his hands and a white mask that covered his face. Ho! You dressed up. The sudden voice did startle Loki, but he wasn't as scared as the first 3 times this had happened. Turning around slowly, Loki looked through his plastic mask and glared at the man whose name he still didn't know. "What do I call you?" Loki asked in a biting tone. Oh, you don't know." Loki glared at the man even more fiercely, but his mask kept his expression hidden and only prolonged the silence between them. "Boss. Call me boss." "Sure, boss. I'd appreciate it if you didn't startle me each time you spoke to me." "Huh, where's the fun in that?" But Loki, not sharing his humor, just sighed. "Walk with me," the man said, and Loki began to walk with the man, trying to keep his speed up to match the man's long strides. "We're going to steal in Chelsea today, at this address," the man said, pulling out a piece of paper from his pocket and handing it to Loki. Loki read through the address and didn't recognize it, but still stuffed the paper back into his pocket, or at least tried to, until he was reprimanded. "What are you doing, boy? You don't need to keep evidence, toss it away." "Oh, okay." Loki did as he was told, shredded the paper into pieces and tossed them away, allowing them to be carried by the wind. "Do you have lockpicks?" Boss asked, and Loki responded begrudgingly. "I have a few flimsy strips of metal. And I don't know how to pick locks." "That will do for now. You'll learn today and make your own eventually. How do you think you'll succeed in opening the door today?" Slap. With a slap to the back of his head that threatened to displace his mask, Loki frowned heavily at the brutality but did not retaliate. "My time will come, just keep your head down and wait, Loki. Play the long game. You don't need to pick the door lock to enter. Get creative. Try and enter the house using other different ways." "Then why did you ask me if I had a lockpick on me?" "Because if you can pick locks, you can open the safes around the house and pick up valuable things." Loki and his boss walked the rest of the way talking, with boss asking questions and Loki responding until they finally reached their destination. "Got any more questions? What happened to your previous partner?" Loki asked. Haha, sure, I'll tell you," the man said with a smile. He slowly traced out his gun and then turned towards Loki, who was already as pale as the mask he was wearing. "Why don't I tell you about that after you're back?" the man said, and Loki felt cheated but didn't retaliate. He had already spotted the faint outline of a gun poking through the overcoat, and he did not want to provoke an armed man. "All right, now off you go. Or do you need me to baby you?" the man asked, and pushed Loki towards the door of the house. Loki sent one last glance the man's way and made his way across the street towards his target, a large white house that looked royal on its own. Arriving at the door, Loki thought back to the question he had asked the man earlier: "How do you know the houses you target are empty?" "The black market sells a list, for a profitable cut of the loot, of course." Remembering the answer, Loki couldn't help but wonder, how many people are involved in this operation? Are they all interconnected? Or do they not care for each other? Loki pulled out his flimsy lockpicking tools and began to get to work trying to open the locks on the door. Maybe I'll get lucky. But it quickly became apparent that Loki wasn't going to get anywhere near picking the lock when not a single pin in the lock was set by him after 5 whole minutes. After sending a glance the man's way, who just shrugged, Loki sighed and moved around the house to look for other ways to enter it. Trying the back door first, Loki found it locked and hence gave up entering from it. Instead he began searching for any open windows or loose vents he could get in from. And he finally did. After around 5 minutes of searching and trying to budge a few windows, Loki climbed onto the balcony of the first floor and was able to slide open the glass door covering it. Got it. Entering the house, Loki began to scour around based on what he had been taught on his short trip to the house and searched for the most important room in the house, the master bedroom. The master bedroom was the room where people usually kept all their valuables. Arriving at a particularly lavish room with a bed, Loki concluded he found the master bedroom. Opening the cupboard that was left unlocked, Loki spotted the safe that was inside it. "Can I open it?" Loki took a deep breath and calmed himself down before taking out his flimsy tools once again, as he got to work on opening the lock. Depending on his deft and nimble hands that had been training for pickpocketing, Loki used his sensitivity to his advantage as he felt around for the state of the lock. But with no luck for a few more minutes, Loki thought of a clever workaround. Why don't I just use magic? Feeling around with his sensitive hands, Loki began to focus his mind on levitating the pins and setting them in place as he worked rapidly towards opening the lock. 1 pin set, 2 pins set, 3 pins set, 4 pins set, and open. Setting the final pin, Loki opened the lock on the safe and finally had access to all the jewelry inside it. Haha, I did it. Although it didn't stop him from feeling terrible about it, Loki picked up all the gold and stowed it away in a black bag which he then tied to seal and stuffed inside his coat pocket. Arriving at the front door, Loki opened the door with a smile, although it was hidden behind a mask. What took you so long? The man asked, standing at the door, having waited nearly 20 minutes for Loki to open the door. Haha, you won't believe it, Loki said, pulling out the black bag with all the stolen goods from his pocket. The man's gasp was audible as he stared at the bag and quickly snatched it away. Good job. I was right. You will make for a good underling. Loki scowled at the man's action but still followed him out of the house and towards the black market where they would sell their loot and Loki would earn his first paycheck from his first ever home invasion. When they arrived at the exchange shack, the man curiously ordered Loki to go and exchange the gold for money at the strange shack alone, without his help. Loki felt a little shy at having to do a job that was unknown to him, but he walked to the dingy shack nonetheless. It wasn't like he had any other options. The person manning it looked cruel and had a hunched back as curved as a vulture's beak. His nose continued the curve and drooped like a witch's nose, making him seem like the crescent moon in the sky. What you here for? The man rudely asked Loki, rattling the wooden counter in an attempt to scare him away. But he quietened down when Loki showed him the bag of stolen goods. What told you of this place, boy? The man asked with an annoyed smile on his face. I don't know his name. He asked me to call him boss. Loki wanted to point to the man standing in the street, but he had vanished from view. I see. Here's your share, the man said as he handed Loki a fat stack of rolled-up bills after taking the bag of gold and weighing it. Loki was easily amazed and immediately counted the bills. 10,000 pounds. Aren't I like a millionaire now? Get out of here, brat, and don't come back again for the entire month. No matter what anyone says or does. Although Loki didn't understand what the man meant, he politely bowed to the man and walked away into the street to find his boss. Anticipating his return, after Loki turned around a corner, the man appeared and patted his shoulders. And with a low whisper, tempting Loki like the devil, he spoke, "Where's the return?" Loki handed the 10,000 pounds over to man with part guilt, part excitement and part reluctance, but he knew he couldn't fight back, at least not just yet. But to his surprise, the man separated 1,000 pounds and handed it back over to Loki. Happy yet? The man asked as he gave Loki a rolled-up stack of 1,000 pounds. Why? Loki asked the man. Clearly there was no reason he needed Loki's help. Because there's a limit to what one person can exchange in a month. With you, I can earn twice the money for half the effort. The man whispered and Loki felt a shiver go down his spine. Not because he felt it was unjustified because he could only keep a tenth of what he earned, but because he was afraid of the gun the man let slip out of his jacket for a few seconds to scare him. Meet me at Whitechapel High Street in a month again. I understand. Loki nodded. Loki and the man departed and Loki left for his house with a guilty expression behind the mask. He did take care not to let anyone follow him home this time though. Keep it together, Loki, soon you'll be able to find a way to get out of this mess. You just need to train a little more and finally, one day overpower him when he uses his gun. By the way, I wonder if I can use magic to create new spells instead of just levitation. Perhaps a spell to open locks easier. Loki looked at the lock in front of him with a blank expression. Magic seems to work by taking something from me, which I think is spirituality, and performing the action I think of in exchange. So how do I create a spell to open the lock in exchange? Do I just think about opening the lock instead? Loki thought hard about opening the lock in front of him by pushing out a small part of his spirituality towards the lock. Click click. And after hearing audible clicking noises, Loki immediately became excited and pushed the door to check if it was open, but he got nothing other than a slightly bruised nose. Huh, it still isn't open. Maybe only a few pins were set. Perhaps I need to supply more spirituality for the spell to be fully successful. Loki tried performing the spell again, except this time he charged the spell with half of the spirituality he had on him. He pushed his mind entirely to form an image of an open lock and did his best to keep the image in his focus even as various other thoughts kept trying to distract him. Click 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 click. Oh, I heard 5 clicks. Loki pushed the door again and finally found it swinging, indicating that the lock was opened. Oh, I'm a genius. But this method leaves me too tired in exchange. So spirituality is something that is related to the stamina of the wizard. Loki wondered, but with no other explanation popping up in his mind, he skipped any further debate on it with himself. Perhaps if I eat well from now on, I will be able to gain more spirituality since I'll have more stamina. Well, nothing wrong in trying. Loki spent the entirety of the next month working on his magic as he tried inventing a few other spells, but given how uncontrollable his magic seemed to be, very few tries resulted in success. On the last day before Loki had to meet his boss again, he sat down and began to consolidate all the work he had done in the previous month. Alright, let's do a check on the types of magics I know. A light spell that takes very little spirituality but needs it continuously to stay active. A levitation spell that takes up 1/4 of my stamina. A lock-unlock spell that takes up 1/4 of my stamina. A knockback spell whose output depends on the amount of spirituality poured into the spell. But with my entire stock, I can knock back an open wooden door easily. A loosely successful lace tying spell that might tie the laces wrongly. And finally, a fire spell that generates a stream of fire. This also depends on the amount of spirituality poured into the spell, but it also needs it continuously to sustain the spell. 6 magics, all different from each other and all useful. But the trouble being that their activation time is dependent on luck. Sometimes they activate instantaneously while other times they activate after almost a second. I guess I did a good amount of work this last month. Haha, I should be a genius if I can do such things so easily. Perhaps I'm the only person who can do such powerful magics wandlessly. Big Bewather. Big Bewather. You're smiling weirdly again. Sorry for scaring you, Elaine. But Big Brother was just a little happy. No problem, Big BW other. I know you're a hero and not a demon lord. Thank you, Elaine. Loki hugged Elaine and they both continued playing with their dolls. Loki's physique during this month hadn't cured, but it was definitely not as bad as he was before. There was some springiness in his muscles, his body seemed fuller and no bones poked to showcase his skeleton. Soon the night passed and Loki woke up and dressed with a little worry in his eyes. The stealing felt a little more real this time. Strange. Why am I feeling nervous on the second time instead of the first? Haha, I hope I'm not raising any flags. Setting his mask on his face, Loki finally slipped out of the house and began to move towards Whitechapel High Street. With each step he took, the perpetual cold air of London began to bite against his ears. Is it just me, or did the clouds just get darker? Is it going to rain again today? How does it rain so much here? Loki pulled his jacket closer and stood waiting at Whitechapel High Street. Boo. Haha, not funny. Loki said, laughing dryly. Tisk. Kids are only good when they are innocent. Follow me. Loki began to follow his boss and soon realized that they were moving towards the black market. Are we going to pick up our targets? Oh. The little kid is learning. Apart from that particular comment, their journey was silent. They soon arrived at the black market and the boss went to the shack first to retrieve his target, at which point Loki noticed the shack owner and the rest of the people around the shack act strangely, as if they was particularly gleeful to see boss, for some reason. Once the boss returned, he nodded for Loki to go and get his target. Loki moved to the shack and stood in the short queue, only to soon arrive in front of the same scary-looking man to whom he had sold his loot the last month. Oh, you're back. At least you came back only after a month. The man said, but Loki noticed an eerie glint in his eyes and sent shivers down his spine in spite of his innocent words. Yes, Loki said, gulping a little. I see. Are you here to stare at me? The man asked with a slight chuckle since Loki hadn't stated his purpose yet. Boss said you had my target. Of course. But perhaps you should follow your boss today instead of going where the target is. Might learn a thing or two, you never know. The scary-looking man said as Loki heard a round of chuckles from those that surrounded the shack. Huh, what do you mean? Sometimes misfortune blessed onto others can serve as a preliminary warning. Slam. Before Loki could continue the conversation, the man slammed his hand on the wooden table, scaring Loki and causing him to jump in fright, but the man just smiled and lifted his hand, revealing a small white slip of paper. Loki looked at the piece of paper and picked it up before quickly running away under the harsh mocking gazes of the rest of the people in the line. As Loki's gaze rested on the boss, he wondered, should I tell him about what happened at the shack? No. If he was at least a little decent, I might've. But not when he is only using me without regard for my life. Loki moved closer and peeked at the address on the boss's slip to try and understand why the man in the shack was so gleeful, but it seemed like any other ordinary address to him. 12 Grimald Place, Borough of Islington, London. Where are you going? Here, Loki said, showing off his address pointing to a house in Notting Hill. Make sure to get everything. I don't want anything less than last time. Or you know what will happen. And I wish you bad luck. Loki said rudely and trotted off towards his own target house with a skip in his step, happy that some misfortune was about to befall his captor. I hope I can be free from him today. I hope I won't have to work under his thumb any longer. Turning around the corner, Loki immediately went into hiding to make sure he could follow his boss today. He didn't want to miss the special show he was going to be given, not when he had front seat tickets to it. I don't know what it is, but I feel something incredible is about to happen. But doesn't he have a gun? Won't he be able to defend himself? Maybe he doesn't know how to shoot because he's partially blind. Although Loki lost his boss a couple of times while following him, he made sure to catch back up by following the most likely routes to the destination. The routes all involved staying hidden in the darkness and shadows, evading people and not letting their attention fall on him. It was a typical movement pattern that he had learnt during his time as a pickpocket, something that had been ingrained into his very being. Finally, Loki reached a dark and rustic street that was flanked by apartments on both sides of the road. Wasn't it 12 Grimald Place? Loki counted the houses on the street and finally landed on the number 12 etched in gold on a particularly dark black door. The door, lined by spiky metal fences on either side, stood as a reflection of all dark and unholy, reminding anyone who graced it of the night when all the demons spewed out. It was unsettling, especially because of the stone gargoyle on the door out of whose mouth the knocker hung. It looks scary, Loki thought as he looked at the door that his boss was standing in front of. The cold man looked around, making sure no one was looking at him, and brought out his tools to pick the lock on the door. Loki saw the man fiddle with the lock for a few seconds before the door opened as if it had been left unlocked. The door swung open slightly only to reveal darkness even darker than black waiting inside the home. The man opened the door wide, but because Loki was far away, he couldn't see anything on the inside. What's going on? Loki thought as he looked at the dark door that was shut close after the man walked into the home. Loki waited for 15 minutes but nothing indicated any signs of movements on the inside. None of the 3 windows that lined vertically on the wall facing the street ever lit up to show any indication of occupation, and neither was there any sound to indicate movement inside. Should I go in? But what if he asks me why I followed him here? Why don't I wait for a little while longer? I haven't heard a gunshot. I'm sure he will try to defend himself if something happens. Loki stood around on the street waiting for any indication of what was happening inside as his patience was slowly wearing thin. Did someone kill him already? Loki wondered. Then I guess that's it. I'm free. Just like that. Loki started to pace away from the house because its dead silence was creeping him out, but when he cast one last glance at the house he saw a bright green flash on the window on the first floor. What was that? Loki stopped in his tracks, his hesitation stemming from the faint opportunity that he cooked up in his mind. Did he kill, boss? I should run awa. Loki started to think but paused. What was I think? Was that magic? Although Loki didn't know for sure, something in his gut made him feel like there was a huge opportunity in front of him. He could feel that there was something magical about what he had just seen. Can I learn magic from the person that lives there? If he could fight off against a person with a gun, he should be powerful, right? Perhaps he can teach me. Loki's heart began to beat rapidly, and his face expressed his excitement in the form of wide starry eyes as he clenched his hands until his knuckles turned white. But what if the man wants to kill him? What if I shout at him from outside? I can try that, and then if he doesn't like it, I can run away. It's worth a try. Convincing himself, Loki nodded and began to walk towards the house. Arriving at the door, Loki looked at the window and shouted out loud. Is anyone in there? Mr. Wizard, I saw that bright green flash of light. Are you also a wizard? I'm also a wizard. Can you hear me? I want to go to the same school you went to. With his naive shouts, Loki tried attracting the attention of the resident, but after the first green flash, there was no other sound or light in response to his questions. Seeing no responses to his questions, Loki thought of something else. Mr. Wizard, can I come in? I know how to do magic too. I made a few of my own spells. Could we share? Before Loki could shout more things that would embarrass him and the people listening to him, the door opened. So that's why she didn't respond. I'm sorry, Mrs. I didn't know you were a woman. Loki looked at the woman standing in front of him and easily guessed that her demeanor was strict and uncaring. Her eyes were cold and her face had the most neutral, unhappy expression possible. She would probably do good in a game of poker. What's your name? The lady asked Loki, and from her expression, it wasn't a question, it was a statement that demanded an answer. Loki. My name's Loki. The woman's eyes gained an unconcealable gleam as she looked at the boy in a new light. She stepped a little away from the door and indicated for Loki to enter. And Loki did. He sidestepped the gap between the door and the woman and entered the house. As he did, he noticed the small stick holstered on her waist and let out a low whistle. Is that a wand? Loki asked as he stepped backwards. I saw one shaped like an umbrella earlier. But before the woman could answer, Loki tripped. Thud. Instead of collapsing on the hard carpeted floor though, Loki landed on something soft and squishy. It was also surprisingly warm to the touch. What's tia? Loki immediately stood up and looked at the man who had collapsed on the floor. The man had a face he recognized, a face that was no longer hidden by the mask around his head. He wasn't breathing and neither were any of his other body parts moving to indicate the presence of life. Loki bumped into the woman as he walked backwards, but immediately rushed away as he tried to maintain distance between himself and her. I know you killed him. But, wait, why didn't I think you would want to kill me too? Loki asked in a hushed whisper, afraid of alerting the neighbors and being caught up in this mess. As if an arson charge wasn't enough, now I've even become a murderer. Everything seems to always go wrong when I meet any magical people. Loki stared into the eyes of the woman, trying not to make any quick movements that would startle either of them. The woman was the first to break the silence, not by speaking but by turning around and locking the door with the help of her wand. Loki's eyes widened in horror, but he didn't know what else to do. Shall I use magic to knock her out? That's my only option if I don't want to get locked up. Before anything else could interrupt them, Loki stretched out his hands and quickly emitted almost all of his spirituality towards the stern woman. Thanks to his luck, in no time one of his only offensive spells activated and he shot an invisible wave of force using his magic. The trinkets in the hallway all flew off their hooks on the walls, several paintings collapsed as if pushed off their hooks by the wind and the coat rack blew away taking with it several coats and hats. But not the stern woman, she didn't even budge. Instead, she was holding her wand out and maintained a translucent barrier between herself and Loki. The barrier rippled under the effect of the force, but it stood strong. The force soon ended and the person who it was meant for was not even affected. Good. That was all the woman said before ignoring Loki again and walking past him. Loki flinched as the woman got closer, but he did nothing else. He could do nothing else. He didn't have any energy after using most of his spirituality on the spell he had just cast. "What are you going to do with me?" Loki asked with worry and fear as he watched the woman walk past. "Careful with your tone, you filthy Mew boy. I don't bite." The woman snarled and began to walk towards the hall. Loki didn't want to follow her and he was wary. How did I jump from the frying pan into the fire? Why is everything going wrong from the time I've come into this world? Is there no law of Beander characteristic convergence in this world? What even is the point of the Saphira Castle if I can't become a Beander in the first place? Loki was disappointed. All his frustrations imploded after he was trapped again. It's not like I asked for any of this to happen. Why is this happening to me? Follow me, boy. The woman barked, snapping Loki out of his thoughts. Loki instead walked to the door and checked it for himself, and only when he found it was locked magically, in a way he couldn't just turn the locks even by using magic, did he walk towards the woman, stepping over the body of a very dead man in the process. HMPF. At least you have some brains. The lady commented. As they entered the hall together, Loki found it shocking to the point he forgot to breathe for a second. Is the space inside bigger than the space outside? Loki wondered, looking at the large dining hall ornated with multiple chandeliers and gold-plated eating equipment. They were arranged over a solid dark walnut table that somehow seemed alive since it had bonsai trees growing out of its middle at regular intervals. She must be a great witch to have accomplished such a complicated spell. Sitting at the head seat of the table, the lady looked at Loki with her arms folded and a stern gaze. "I am Walburga Black, the current head of the most ancient and noble house of Black," she stated. "Noble enough to commit murder in broad daylight, that is." Loki mumbled under his breath, but it seemed like the woman heard him. Zap. Ouch. That hurt. What was that? "A stinging hex, you filthy mud, Mr. Loki, and if you don't behave yourself I will not hold back with the next one." "You were holding back?" Loki asked, looking at the red welt forming on his skin. "How does she know my name?" "Now, as you know, your current companion died at my hands. I used the Avada Kedavra curse on him, so he's not going to come back. At least not if you aren't an angel from the death pathway." The last sentence immediately shot Loki's blood pressure up as he looked at Walburga with an unprecedented amount of interest. "Did you just say the death pathway? Did you mean Beyonders when you said angel?" Walburga quirked up her eyebrow and looked at Loki with suspicion and interest, bringing a silent question for Loki to answer. "I learned about Beyonders from the man you killed." Loki evaded skillfully. But Walburga immediately drew up a scorn. "I understand you're lying and I will not pry into your secrets. Either way, it makes my work easier." "Wah. Oh please." The last thing that filthy mudblood knew was about Beyonders. He thought I was holding a stick to scratch my back. "I appreciate your attempt at thinking on your feet and proposing a dead man to be your source of information since he can no longer be revived. But you are out of luck on this one. I didn't think that far ahead. Guilty as charged. Now on to more important matters, Mr. Loki." "Important matters?" "Yes. Currently, the most ancient and noble house of Black is under the threat of extinction, a threat you were prophesied to quench." "What? There's a prophecy about me? How come I don't know about it?" But Walburga ignored his untimely interruption and continued speaking as if he didn't exist while simultaneously looking right at him, a paradox of immeasurable proportions. "The prophecy also claimed that you would have a partner, but for the love of Salazar Slytherin, I could not stand the man who was your first partner. The curly-haired baboon thought he could take me out, a demigod of the darkness pathway, using that black box he calls a gun. There's a partner too. Again. Why don't I know about this stuff? And you're a demigod. Who gave the prophecy, by the way? An angel of the visionary path. I mean, did a person hallucinate it or what? Seeing as I am running out of time, I wonder if you can sort out this mess before I am forced to fall asleep." Walburga said, completely ignoring him. Loki was stunned. What the hell? What am I supposed to do? With all due respect, Please let me go. Loki said, bowing to Walburga with an earnest request. Sigh, I can see that you have no idea about the wizarding world. But that doesn't mean the prophecy is wrong. Perhaps you will gain the ability to help me only after I wake up. Walburga said with some disappointment. Seeing he had no other option, what do you mean you're going to sleep? Did you suddenly lose your anchors and are on the verge of losing control? Loki dropped all pretenses and asked, a little worried about what was happening. Walburga's eyebrows immediately shot up as Loki revealed the depth of his knowledge about Beyonders, but she didn't question him and spoke with a little bit of respect. Not entirely, I did lose my anchors. But it was more like losing my connection to them because of an attack, although yes, I am on the verge of losing control. Loki nodded and prompted Walburga to continue. I can only promise to be awake for a couple more months, after which, I will have to use the help of a black family heirloom to enter an eternal slumber until you find a way to stabilize my condition. Why do you trust me so much? Loki asked with a frown. Matters related to anchors were a complicated and highly personal affair. No Beyonder would willingly expose their greatest weakness to even their closest friends. So Loki was a little shocked but more excited than anything else. How could he not, since he was getting involved in matters relating to a demigod while he wasn't even a Sequence 9 low-level Beyonder? It was as if Christmas had come earlier for a fan of LOTM. Because a rather important friend of mine gave out your prophecy. She belongs to the White Tower pathway and is a demigod too. I see. Loki nodded, but he was still a bit wary of Walburga since she'd just murdered a man in cold blood and looked completely unaffected by it, a telltale sign of losing control, loss of emotions that kept you humane. Is this my opportunity to become a Beyonder? But I can't become a Beyonder of the darkness pathway. My Sephiroth is meant only for the Fool, Door and Error pathways. Can I switch to one of the 3 pathways later down the line? Or perhaps trade Sephiroth with the true god of a different pathway if they have the corresponding Sephiroth? Loki was worried and it showed on his face, but Walburga kept silent, waiting for Loki to voice his problem. I need your help, Loki said, breaking the silence. What do you want me to do? Walburga asked calmly. I have a little sister and I want you to keep her safe until I am strong enough to protect her myself. You don't want to turn her into a Beyonder? No. Not when she is so young. How young is she? She turns 4 years old in a couple of days. So you want me to find a way to babysit her? Walburga asked with a strong tone of annoyance. Don't you have anyone that can keep her safe for the next few years? You aim to become a demigod in the next few years? Yes. Loki nodded as he watched Walburga smile in annoyance. Do you think it's so easy to become a high sequence Beyonder? I know the acting method, Loki said with confidence. Everyone important knows the acting method. And yet there are so few demigods, forget about the handful of angels and true gods. Loki wanted to say he was special since he had the Sephiroth, but held back since he felt it unwise to reveal one of his trump cards so soon, lest there be someone like Aemon who could wring it from him for some ridiculous reason. What do you think? Demigods and angels grow on trees. It will take you more than 30 years to even come close to becoming a demigod, and that's just the fastest recorded time. I see. Loki agreed on the surface, but he felt differently on the inside. So I will be the fastest Beyonder to become a true god. On top of everything, how do you expect to keep yourself hidden from the rest of the world? Everyone will be on your throat the minute you begin to get stronger. Why do you think I've not advanced after becoming a demigod? What pathway formulae do you have? Loki asked, diverting the topic so that he wouldn't be flamed for his dreams and ambitions. I have the entire set of potion formulae for the darkness pathway. You have a card of blasphemy? Loki asked with shock. Emperor Russell was a part of this world. Merlin's beard. How does a mud do you know about the cards of blasphemy? Walburga asked with the first shocking expression on her face. By chance do you know anyone called Emperor Russell? Who made the cards of blasphemy then? Never mind. By the way, who is the person that caused you to lose control? Loki asked with a figure of curiosity. Sigh. He is a terrifying man. It is better you don't learn about him until you are able to protect yourself from his influence. I didn't and am paying a heavy price. So he's someone either from the visionary pathway or from the abyss pathway. Scary. Both are scary. One can be standing right next to you and you won't notice him, and the other can kill you if you just think about killing him. I should stop thinking about this to avoid alerting them. Otherwise, I'm surely going to end up getting on the radar of monstrosities who can turn me into a pawn in their games. But what is this about magic? How does this work? Does everyone have the ability to do magic? Phew, you're asking all the important questions, aren't you? That's the biggest mystery no one currently has the answer to. Magic graced the world very recently, about 1,000 and odd years ago. What? Loki was dumbfounded. No one knows how it happened, but everyone knows that all Beyonders and sometimes specifically chosen individuals are able to wield magic with no effort on their part except mastering a few incantations and controlling their spirituality. Loki looked at Walburga with a strange expression. He wanted to ask her something else but he stayed quiet. Has anyone told you you are a strange person? Walburga asked, and Loki just rubbed his head embarrassedly. By the way, can you teach me magic? I can do my best for the next couple of months, but you will learn more when you enroll at Hogwarts, the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hogwarts. Why does that name sound familiar? Loki mumbled. Wait, you mean Hogwarts is in Harry Potter Hogwarts? Loki asked with confusion apparent on his face. If you mean the Harry Potter that will be enrolling into Hogwarts next year, then yes, I mean that Hogwarts. What the heck? So I've transmigrated into an Harry Potter world that has been mixed with Lord of the Mysteries. What the heck? What's going on here? I don't even know anything about Harry Potter except that there's a magic school and a villain tries to attack the school each year but fails for some reason because of the power of friendship. Single quote. But before he could think or curse further, Walburga interrupted him with an important question. So, which pathway are you going to choose to become a Beyonder in? I can recommend a few to you since I have a few friends from the other standard pathways. Do you know any potion formulae from the Fool, the Error, or the Door pathways? Loki asked since he was slightly worried now. Walburga looked at him strangely this time. Are you playing a joke? Which pathways are those? The Seer, the Marauder, or the Apprentice pathways? I know no such thing. Walburga replied with skepticism and caused Loki to become shocked instantaneously. What? His mouth hung open, wide enough that one could fit an entire fist in it as he mused internally, wondering what messed up sort of world he had transmigrated to. How come I have the Sephiroth of the Lord of the Mysteries pathway then? What does this mean? You seem shocked. Walburga asked Loki, seeing how he was standing with his mouth hanging open. How many standard pathways are there? Loki fired a question immediately. 19. How do you not know that but have so much mysticism knowledge? Are you sure you're alright? This is madness. Loki shouted inside his mind. Decided on which pathway you want to start your journey in? Walburga asked, irrespective of Loki's shock. I need a little time. Can we bring my sister here in the meantime? Sure. Creature. Pop. Yes, mistress. A scrawny creature with large drooping pointed ears and nose, the height of a toddler, teleported in front of Walburga and bowed deeply, waiting for a command like a good servant. Even as Loki watched the creature teleport in front of Walburga, he did not pass a comment or an excited remark that would have usually been expected of him. Instead, he remained partially shocked, not having recovered from the loss of the only 3 pathways he wanted to start in. Follow him and bring back his sister along with him to the house. As you wish. Before creature turned and executed the order, Walburga added a new order: treat them with respect. Guest of the Black family ought to be treated with. Creaker looked back up at Walburga and nodded with determination in his eyes. As you wish. Will no one on the street become startled upon seeing him? Loki asked, having come out of shock. Not entirely, but enough to hold a normal conversation again. Mistress's guests do not need to worry about that. Creature can turn himself invisible. Loki nodded and began to lead the creature that was turning invisible, but a stray thought made him pause. Wait a second, was he named Creature because it rhymes with the word creature? But since Creature had already begun leaving the house, courtesy of the locked door opening, Loki ran behind him, noticing that while they were speaking someone had already moved the body which was lying in the hallway. As Loki stepped onto the street, he found Creature's floating head turning to him and speaking in a rough voice that felt like sawdust grinding against his ears. Mistress's guest can walk ahead. Creature will follow. I understand. Loki nodded, feeling slight pity for the creature in front of him that looked like it was in a similar situation that he was in not long ago. But since it was not his place to say anything, he just nodded and moved on with his task of bringing his little sister to the house. As Loki stepped out of the house he felt someone tailing him, but when he tried to look around he found no one. I need to learn this spell. It'll be so helpful in stealing. Oh, wait, no. I don't need to steal anymore. Walking back to his house, Loki fell into silent contemplation about what he had just learnt. Is there really no pathway related to the Fool, the Error and the Door? But then why would I have the Sephiroth of the corresponding pathway? And then there's Law of Beander characteristic convergence, so shouldn't Walburga have these characteristics? Is she lying? On top of it all, what about the characteristics that the celestial worthy of heaven and earth would have planned for me to ingest and lose control? It feels like the true god of the darkness pathway has concealed the three pathways for a particular reason. But if it is concealed, why can I share knowledge about these pathways? Shouldn't I also be affected by the concealment? Maybe it is because of the Sephiroth the concealment does not affect me. Then I need to be mindful of my words. It'd be best if I was able to begin my journey in one of these pathways while keeping it disguised as another of the recognized 19 pathways. Arriving in front of his house, Loki stood outside for a few moments and then with a soft sigh shook his head as he pushed the door open to pick Elaine up. Whatever, I'll think about all this later. Elaine, wake up. Big Bewather. Elaine woke up with a soft yawn since it was still early in the morning. Big Bewather, you're early today, Elaine exclaimed as she saw Loki and instantly became happier. Rushing to hug him, Elaine raised her hands wanting to be picked up. And Loki did just that. He picked her up and looked comically funny with a similarly sized human clinging onto him when he was still so short. Elaine, we're going to a new home today. New home, Big Bewather? Elaine asked with wide eyes. Yes, Elaine. New home. It's even grander than this one. And we'll even have a servant who can help us. Savant. Can Elaine play with the Savant? Yes. He'll play any game you ask him to. Yeah. There will even be magic for you to see. Your toys will fly on their own, light up and even sing on their own. Magic. Yes. Magic. A witch will be living with us too. Can she play with me too? Haha, yes. So do you like it? Loki thought with a sly smile on his face. That lady can at least do this much for me, right, since she expects me to save her life. Elaine loves to play. Elaine shouted with joy as she nestled against her brother. Good, then let's go. Loki nodded and then spoke into the air. Creature, there are a few stuffed toys on the upper floor, could you please get them along with us? As you wish, mistress guests. Creature said, breaking out of his invisibility and surprising Elaine. Big Bewather. Elaine hugged Loki tighter, feeling a little scared. He's a good person like you, Elaine. Don't you want to play with him? Elaine can play with him, Big Bewather. Yes, you can play with him. Elaine maintained eye contact with Creature for a bit as if analyzing what games she could play with him and then nodded. Okay, Big Bewather. Can I teleport you, sirs and madams? Creature asked. Yes, do you want us to do something? Loki asked. Your hand, sir. Creature said, and Loki nodded while extending his hand, which Creature held tight. As soon as Creature held Loki's hand, the space around them twisted and in a swirl of colors they vanished into a point, reappearing in the same hallway where Walburga was sitting on her chair, under an empty portrait. Arg, I don't want to go through that ever again. Loki decided in his mind, holding his head with his free hand. You're back, Walburga stated while she read the newspaper, drinking some plain tea. Big Bewather, can we go again? Elaine blurted the question out with huge expectations as she ignored Walburga and asked Loki with a happy tone. Her eyes happily scanned everything, jumping from one object to the next, absorbing everything in sight like the hungry eyes of a predator. You want to do that again? Loki asked, surprised, but Elaine just nodded happily with a bright smile on her face. Loki immediately looked around the room to distract Elaine with something. When his eyes fell on Walburga, who was annoyed since she was ignored, he thought of an idea. Elaine, look, she's the witch I told you about. She can do magic. Don't you want to see magic? Loki asked with a smile on his face that pissed off Walburga. Elaine looked at Walburga with all the focus her nearly 4-year-old body could produce. Veins on Walburga's head throbbed, but she still pulled out her wand and showed Elaine a simple magic trick. She conjured a bunch of roses and handed them to Elaine. Here, little girl. WWAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA Walburga. You're the best. Elaine shouted, hugging Walburga while Loki was forced to watch on in jealousy with Walburga smirking back at him. Can you make a doll? Elaine asked, and Walburga granted her wish, conjuring a beautiful knitted doll that looked like a mini version of Elaine herself. It's meeeeeee. Big Bewather, look. How cool is this? Elaine shouted as she waved around her doll and began to play with it. Yes, it's nice that you've found a new doll, but what do you say at a time like this? Loki asked as he pulled on Elaine's fluffy cheeks. Wank wu. Yes, tell that to Mrs. Black then. Wank wu Mrs. Bewack. Elaine kindly greeted and then went back to playing with her new doll sitting on the floor. You're surprisingly good with kids, Mrs. Black. Loki said as he watched Elaine play with her doll. HMPF. Whatever. Creature will show you to your rooms. I hope you are ready in 2 hours. I will begin to teach you about magic then. There isn't much time, and I don't want to waste my time with you if you don't have any talent. Seriously? Loki asked with a surprised look on his face. Yes, I do not joke around, Mr. Loki. Hee, I can already imagine me being the most powerful wizard there is in the world. Walburga just shook her head, looking at Loki, who had stars in his eyes and was staring off into the distance. We shall see. But I appreciate your enthusiasm. I hope you can maintain it throughout our lessons. As Loki stepped on the dark, old, and springy wooden stairs, he watched with fascination the various animated portraits on the walls. The people in the portraits were drinking tea or some other beverage to ward off the cold, some were playing while others were just gossiping. Most did not even look at Loki and Elaine as they crossed them on the stairs, but some did, and they nodded, giving out scant greetings or welcomes, surprising Loki a little and making him think that the people in the paintings were alive. Did she trap all these people in paintings? Is she a witch that belongs to the dark side? What happened to the body of that man anyway? Was he also thrown into the paintings? Why did the black market give him this house to steal from anyway? There clearly was someone else in the house, and I doubt the older thieves who were previously sent here went back alive. I'll ask them the next time I go around there, maybe. Maybe I should just ask Lady Black. With that final thought, Loki pushed the matter to the back of his mind and continued watching the portraits as he walked up the stairs. Stopping in front of a door on the first floor, Creature spoke up. This be sirs and madam's rooms. The washroom is down the hallway towards the right. There are also fresh clothes that you might want to change into in the cupboards. Creature spoke with a slight bow that only accentuated his curved back further and walked back down the stairs to finish his other duties. Loki looked at the closed door and then turned the handle to push himself into the room. The door was heavy and smelled like the pages of an old library book, but once inside the room, Loki froze in surprise, his mouth hung loose and his eyes grew wide. Elaine wasn't any different, as an excited glimmer sparkled in her eyes. The bed was grand and had velvety covers printed with the design of various butterflies on its side. The pillow covers were a matching deep blue, and the bed itself was framed by golden borders carved like the lushes of a fine backyard. What surprised Loki the most though was the glass windows that allowed sunlight into the house. There shouldn't be any windows here, don't the sides have other houses conjoined? Loki thought as he peered outside the windows and looked at the cloudy blue sky. The windows themselves were framed by golden carvings which were animated. Loki could see people and animals rushing around, playing with each other in harmony. Big Bewather. Look, there's a puppy in here. Elaine shouted as she noticed a dog on the window border. Haha, yes, there is. Seeing Elaine lean on the table in front of the window and watch the animals playing around, Loki sprouted a soft smile on his face and his evaluation of Walburga increased to a new high in his mind. What a powerful witch she must be. Little sis, let's go and get ready. Then you can play. Okay, big BW other. Elaine and Loki took a shower and changed their clothes to ones that fit both of them well, but Elaine caught Loki's attention by raising a question while squinting her large eyes, as if trying to avoid looking at something that disgusted her. Big BW other, are you sure that is all right? Huh, do I not look good? I think it suits me fine. Loki said, staring at himself in the mirror. He was wearing a bright pink beanie, an orange jacket, underneath which was a green shirt, and top it all off was a gray pant. Elaine scrunched up her face but didn't say anything otherwise, which Loki took as a confirmation of his style. Huh, I'm sure Walburga will be floored when she sees me in this. Loki thought with a proud smile on his face. And floored she was. What in Morgana's milk sacks are you wearing? Walburga complained as soon as she spotted Loki when he returned to the hall. Why? Can't handle how good I look? Loki asked, striking a pose, causing Walburga to cover her face and control the bile that was rising up in her throat. I confiscate your right to touch the wardrobe from today, Walburga stated in a plain voice after recovering her composure. Wah! Loki began to argue, but Walburga instantly shut him up with a stern glare. Now, let us move to the study room, Walburga said, and began to walk through the large hallway, moving past doors on either side and towards the door at the end of the hall. Loki watched Walburga move past doors, but he also saw her linger in front of a particular door for a little longer with some longing in her eyes, but before Loki could question her, she was already moving again. Pushing open the door at the end of the hallway, Walburga entered the room and Loki followed. As soon as Loki entered the room, a gasp escaped his lips as he watched all the things in the room. An endless row of shelves filled with books stood in one corner, a court with various dummies stood in another, a calm reading chair stood in the middle of the two with a tall lamp to light up the area for reading beside it. A table stood in front of the chair with a pile of books open and collapsed on top of it like someone had just been reading something. I've been meaning to ask, can magic extend space like this? Loki asked with anticipation clear in his voice. Yes, they fall under the category of space extension charms. Walburga responded and moved to the table in the center of the room. With the wave of her wand, Walburga sent all but one of the books on the table back to their place in the library seamlessly under Loki's fascinated gaze. What's this book? Loki asked as he peeked over at the book that was lying on the table. An Introduction to Magic. A theory book. What? We won't be doing any practical magic. Let me remind you, you don't have a wand, boy. And you're malnourished. It probably won't even take a strong breeze to blow you away. Walburga retorted as Loki flinched at each of his deficiencies. Can't I do magic wandlessly? Like I already do. I bet you don't even know how you do magic. Don't you just push out as much of your spirituality and hope that an effect comes true? Well, yes. But don't you do magic like that? Loki asked, a little surprised at having his method dissected. What's the point of a wand if everyone did magic that way? Walburga responded with a question. I don't know. Maybe it helps increase the speed of mana leaving your body or something. Loki said, thinking a little. Not the right answer, but not wrong either. What do you mean? A wand is something like an automatic regulator. It helps regulate the amount of magic you expel from your body. Why would you need to do that? Loki asked with confusion etched onto his face. Which is why you're going to read this book. Walburga said, tossing the book onto Loki's face with great speed that he had to react immediately to catch and save his nose. Find the answer to your question and tell me the answer in 2 hours. If you don't, I won't teach you anymore. What? Why? Because if you're not talented, it doesn't make sense to teach you all this when you will learn it at Hogwarts anyway. Loki wanted to argue but he couldn't find a way to counter what Walburga said, so he kept silent. Your time's ticking, Walburga said, pointing at the grandfather clock in the room. Damn it. Just you wait. Loki held his head in his hands as he stared at the index of the book that Walburga had tossed at him. Which chapter should I start with? Since it wasn't possible to read the entire book in 2 hours, Loki began to look at the index to shorten the number of chapters he had to read to get his answers. Since she told me to find the answer in 2 hours, it should be possible. But which chapter would give me the answer? Chapter 1, An Intro to Magic. No, that seems too broad. Chapter 3, What is Magic? How does it work? This chapter seems related to magic, not wand movements. Oh. Chapter 6, A Guide to Wand Movements, this might be it. Let's look through it. Page number 91. Loki flipped the pages and upon reaching the chapter he started to skim through it. Wands are partially sentient tools that with the help of the remnant will of their cores help the wizard control their magical output. So they are just low-risk mystical items that help in controlling spirituality output. That's what Walburga said too, right? But I need to figure out why I need to do such a thing. What benefit does controlling spirituality have? Loki mumbled. Broadly categorized, wand movements are of 4 types: curves, lines, points, and rotations. They are also commonly called swish, flick, stab and twist. Combinations of these movements while expelling spirituality from the tips of the wands create complex patterns. Since different spells need different shapes of spirituality, along with the right intent, each spell has a different set of movements that must be performed to activate it. So each spell can be broken down into a set of wand movements that create a unique pattern out of spirituality. Is this the answer? But then why did pouring out my spirituality without any patterns still activate the spells that I envisioned? Flipping the pages back towards the index, Loki began reading the chapter titles once again. Chapter 3, What is Magic? How does it work? Page number 46. Flipping the pages again, Loki arrived at the chapter and began reading through the highlighted points. Magic. A phenomenon that performs the impossible that our mind envisions with the help of our spirituality. It can turn a mice into a cup and a pin into a porcupine. It can make you giggle and also make you spill your deepest and darkest secrets. There's a truth spell. Why don't all people use it then? Why didn't Walburga use it on me then? Couldn't she have just used it on me to make me spill my secrets? It can vanish the most important of things, including your memories. It can give you immortality and also take away your life, all in an instant. Immortality. Is the book just making things up? Loki skipped the line and focused on something that stood out more to him. And it can vanish memories. What the heck? I need to think of a counter to this fast. Can I develop an anti-mind messing spell? But how do you keep such a spell powered all the time? And how do I protect myself before I develop such a spell? Wait. Can't I use a watch? If someone erases my memory, I will lose track of time by suddenly jumping a bit forward in time. You've used up an hour. Walburga reminded, breaking Loki out of his thoughtful planning. Oh. Loki responded with a slightly surprised tone and then went back to thinking about the memory erasing problem since Walburga inadvertently pointed out a mistake in his thought process. So using a watch is a no-go since I can't differentiate between when I'm lost in researching something and when someone actually wipes my memories. So what else can I do? Loki began to look around the room for ideas and then he spotted Walburga filing away her nails. Oh, I could do something that leaves behind a permanent change on my body. Like draw up a tally on my hand using a pen so that each time someone changes my memories I see that the tally on my hand is different than I remember it. I'm a good at this. You have 15 minutes remaining, you brat. Walburga said again as she uninterestedly continued to file her nails away. What? Already? Loki asked, shocked. If you still haven't found it, I suggest you give up, Walburga said in a bland tone. No. Loki went back to looking at the page that was open, but then he looked confused. Wait, why did I open this chapter again? Oh yeah, I wanted to figure out why I was able to perform magic just by expelling spirituality out of my body. Wait a second. Even Walburga herself, when she used that shield spell, did she ever move her wand at all? Then how did she create the patterns of spirituality that magic requires? She just pulled out her wand and bam, the shield was there. Loki flipped to the index again and began to search for something in particular. Is there no advanced concepts chapter? Wait, Walburga didn't say I could only use this book, or did she? Anyway, Mrs. Black, Loki shouted. Huh, what happened? You only have 10 minutes left, don't ask for an extension. No, I mean yes. Wait, I mean, could you perform that shield spell once again? Huh, sure. Walburga nodded and flicked her wand out of its holster, causing a semi-transparent white spherical shield to appear in front of her with the tip of the wand at its center. I was right. She doesn't move her hand at all, but then how does she shape the spirituality that is pushed out of her wand for the spell? Is she able to mold it using her wand? Suddenly, as if all the pieces of the puzzle fit into Loki's mind, he exclaimed, I got. But before he could finish his sentence, Walburga flicked her wand and caused Loki's mouth to vanish, making the only sound that came out of him a muffled, excited shout. MUF 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 MUF. Don't shout. It is unbecoming of a person associated with the Black family to shout like a filth commoner. Loki quickly nodded, since it felt extremely weird having his mouth vanished shut. It honestly felt suffocating and stifling. Good. Walbura said, seeing Loki become silent again as she flicked her wand and allowed his mouth to reappear. I got it, Loki said excitedly, but this time making sure to keep his voice softer. Oh, Walburga raised her eyebrows. Did you figure out why you need a wand to do magic? Yes, the book said magic happens when spirituality forms patterns. And so, your wand forms the patterns of spirituality based on your intent because it is a half-sentient item. Don't tell me that's all you figured out. Walburga complained with a dull face. If that was the case, why can you do magic without a wand? Clearly, you don't even know any of the patterns. No, that's not all. The next clue I got from how I do magic myself. The way I do magic is toss a lot of spirituality into the air and then think about what I want to happen really hard. So what? I already told you that. Well, the thing is, with the way I do magic, it isn't instantaneous. Magic takes time for me to happen. I mean, there's at least half a second of delay for magic to happen when I cast magic. What about the delay? Walburga asked with a smile, hinting at the fact that she had figured out what Loki was going to say next. Because although our methods appear similar at first glance as we both push out our spirituality, there's a big difference. Whenever I push out my spirituality into the air, the pattern forms by luck as my spirituality dissipates into the air, and depending on my intent, the magic happens after the pattern forms. While when you do it, you expel only the exact amount of spirituality and with the help of the wand mold it into the perfect shape after adding the right intent to perform the magic. Good job, Walburga said with a proud smile on her face. Haha, aren't I a genius? HMPF. Maybe you have a little brain in there. But don't become too proud, this is just the beginning. Hee. Loki looked positively happy as he giggled to himself while looking at Walburga. Although not direct, Loki could tell that Walburga to some extent enjoyed teaching him. It felt like she was doing something that she had never gotten the opportunity to do earlier, and it was only now that she was able to act out her wishes. Perhaps she is a decent human being as long as she is not affected by the loss of control as a Beander. Good morning. Walburga greeted Loki without looking away from her newspaper. Mrs. Walburga. Loki spoke in a soft tone like a shy child as he watched Walburga read the newspaper. Why is this brat irritating me first thing in the morning? Not even Sirius and Regulus were lick. What happened? Walburga asked, putting the newspaper and the tea she was drinking away. Could we bake a cake today? Loki asked with his best puppy dog eyes impression, causing Walburga's eyes to twitch ever so slightly. Why is he looking at me like this? He's making me feel like I'm some kind of devil that's a cold-blooded monster and drinks children's blood. Why can't he be more like, no, at least he's not as stupid as those two. Why do you want to bake a cake today? Because it's Ella, Loki shouted, but a stinging hex from Walburga brought him back to his composed tone. Walburga had turned hexing him into a habit. She said it was to help Loki act like he was part of a noble house. Cough cough, because it's Elaine's birthday, Loki said with a big smile on his face. Sigh, alright. I don't get what the appeal is to celebrate a year closer to your deathbed, but alright, you may ask Creature to bake a cake. No, I meant could you bake a cake with me? Loki asked, waving his hands around to clear Walburga's misunderstanding and explain himself better. Huh, what? Why should I take part in this mess? Well, for the past 3 days, you've played with Elaine and kept her entertained, so she'd love it if you baked a cake for her with me. Walburga's face twitched as she wondered, does he think I can't see he just wants me to make the cake and then claim that he baked it? Please, Grandma, Loki said, blinking his eyes after looking up at Walburga with the most innocent expression he could muster. Brat, I haven't even baked a cake for my own children. You think I will make it for why? Oh pretty please. But Walburga's eyes fell on Loki's innocent expression. She calmed down a little. Perhaps it is a good idea to move this body a little and listen to his wishes. After all, isn't he going to help me in the end? Ouch. Why did you fire a stinging hex my way? Loki asked, rubbing his arm that had become the victim of a stinging hex. That's for the trouble you're causing me, Walburga said, gulping her tea in one big swing and placing the cup back on the table. You're helping. Yai, ouch. Ouch. Alright, I won't shout. Stop sending stinging hexes my way. Come on, let's go, Walburga said, standing up and moving towards the kitchen. With Walburga and Creature's help, Loki was able to finish baking the cake in a little under 2 hours, and as a personal touch, Loki decorated the cake using cream and wandless magic, creating 4 characters on the cake. Who are they? Walburga asked. Are they his parents? Poor people, look like they are nearly dead and demented. You, me, Creature and Elaine. It's all of us. Aren't we a family now? Loki asked with a smile, proud of his work, but Walburga and even Creature looked at the drawing on the cake with disgust, both having the same thought. How does that look like me? But both Creature and Walburga let their words remain thoughts, not wanting to upset Loki since both thought he was a small child. Later in the morning, when Elaine finally woke up, Loki and company surprised her with an early morning birthday cake. Look, Elaine, Big Brother made a cake for you, Loki said with a proud expression on his face, while Walburga and Creature had the same expression pass through their minds. Shameless. He didn't even mention us helping. Big Bewather, are these aliens? Elaine asked as she looked down on her cake. Huh, take that. That's what you get for taking all our credit. No. This is me, this is Mrs. Walburga, this is Creature, and this is you. There was a stunned silence in the room for a few seconds, and even Elaine only gave a wry smile as she looked at her brother pitifully. I understand, BW other. See, Elaine gets it, Loki said to Creature and Walburga, who both looked like they had given up fighting with Loki on this matter. Creature eventually took pictures with him included, of course, since Elaine wanted him in them too, and Walburga promised her to get them framed and hang them inside the house. Days passed like this in the Black household, with Loki learning theory about magic while Walburga tested him on this theory so that his foundation would be solid. Although Loki hadn't gotten a wand yet, it did not stop him from trying out magic without a wand and perfecting his wandless magic casting. But he hadn't come very far in this avenue since it was hard to control magical output without a wand. He still needed a wand because wands were half sentient and were living, and since they were made from animals that were closer to magic in nature, which made it a lot easier to mold your spirituality with simple intent. Loki even asked Creature for tips since he saw him do magic wandlessly, but Creature explained that magic came instinctually to house elves, like magical creatures, and they didn't need to learn magic as humans did. But in exchange for this ability, they had a modest set of spells that they could perform, and doing anything new was extremely hard, even for them. Walburga, who heard this conversation, added her own insights to the matter. I think the house elves are able to perform magic because of the blessings of a god. I'm not sure how they are linked to the deity, but I think they are, since house elves. Magic cannot be restricted by traditional means of drawing runes that disperse their spirituality. The only practical classes that Loki had were potions and herbology. Both classes did not require a wand, at least not in the beginning. Loki was nearly equally interested in both the subjects, but he preferred potions more. Just something about seeing a simmering cauldron and stirring potions in them made him happy. Walburga spent the rest of her free time drilling into Loki the mannerisms and idiosyncrasies of being a pureblood noble so that he could stand proud and not sully the Black family heritage. 2 months wasn't a long time for all of this, but it was still enough for Loki to know when to speak loudly and when to keep his mouth shut. Enough stinging hexes had been tossed his way to learn when to do so. The upside of all the etiquette training was how his cursing became more creative. His curses now more often than not struck its victims where they least expected it, like when he cursed Walburga that her quills would remain dry forever and ever, or when he cursed Creature that he would become a free elf. But learning about magic and etiquette was not all that Loki did. He learnt about Walburga too. He learnt she always looked at the door closest to the library. He knew that that was the room in which Sirius and Regulus lived when they were in the Manor from Creature. He learnt that Walburga once every day vanished into her room for about 20 minutes to perform a ritual, but Loki didn't know what it did. Walburga simply said, "You will know when you become a demigod." He also learnt that sometimes, when no one was around and when Walburga thought no one was seeing her, she would smile almost imperceptibly as she looked at the various portraits of all the family members in the Black family. To reduce the loneliness in her heart, Elaine and Loki took to annoying her and got her involved in everything they did. For a few moments each day, to everyone in the Black Manor, they would feel they were all one big family. After 2 months, Loki was overjoyed. Finally, we're going outside today, Loki hummed in joy as he got ready with the clothes Walburga had prepared for him. Slipping on his dark shirt with a clean swipe and wearing the dark black robe after to keep himself safe from the cold, Loki skipped down the stairs and arrived in the living room staring at Walburga, who was reading the newspaper as usual. "What's new in the Daily Prophet, Lady Black?" "Nothing that will interest you." "Ah, did they not continue the story of the magician that turned himself into a pickle?" "No, but they did start a new story about Edwina Lilly the homewrecker." "Ew, not those soap operas again. I thought the Daily Prophet stopped those because people didn't like them." "It's just you that doesn't like them. Now put on the bow tie I gave you, or I'll punish you to read it too." Gasped Lady Black. "How could you not feel the lampooning of this innocent soul? Have mercy, for you don't know when I might ouch." "Ouch. Sorry, no stinging hexes. I swear I'll make a more famous newspaper someday. HMPF. And you say you don't like soap operas." Loki silently put on the bow tie and then stood in attention for Walburga to look at him. "Good, now you look like a proper member of the Black family," Walburga commented, standing up and ironing out the kinks in her dress. "Where are we going though?" Loki asked as he held out his hand for Walburga to hold. "You'll know soon enough," Walburga said, waving her hand over herself and Loki. A dreamy mist appeared around the two, forming a transparent, continuously morphing barrier that distorted their appearance, making it hard for anyone to find out who they were. "Won't people know that we are from the Black family since this is the ability of the darkness pathway?" Loki asked, looking up at Walburga, who he could somehow see clearly in spite of the mist. "No, we could very well be using a Beyonder item to achieve the same effect. But couldn't you have just transfigured our faces to make us look different?" "We could, but that would cause problems for you down the line. It is best to remain in your original form as much as possible so that you don't have any other identities trying to make you lose control when you drink the advancement potion." "I see, I think it makes sense." "Ready?" Walburga asked and Loki nodded. Pop. With a simple twist of space, Walburga and Loki vanished from the hallway and teleported into a narrow alleyway. Loki steadied his swimming vision and read the sign that was hung above his head. "Diagon Alley." Without saying much, Walburga began to walk through the crowd of wizards and shops while Loki turned his head around and admired everything. How come so many wizards can gather here at once? Loki asked as he saw a bunch of child wizards admiring a broomstick that was on display. It's a remote location that has been shielded to keep the muggles away. Although the black market in Nocturne Alley is larger and has roots in the muggle world too. But they're mostly just henchmen of evil gods. Walburga spoke as she came to a stop in front of a store. Magical Menagerie, Loki said, reading the sign on top of the store. Are we here to get a pet for me? Loki asked with excitement clearly heard in his tone. If it was for just a pet, why wouldn't you just get one from a muggle store? Walburga questioned. Because you hate muggles. Loki stated the obvious. HMPF. Either way, this isn't just a pet store. This is much more, Walburga said and walked inside the store, causing the bell on top of the door to release a soft jingle. As they entered the store, Loki couldn't help but glance at all the large and small animals in cages looking eagerly at him and Walburga. Welcome. A lady appearing from the back of the store spoke, walking in seemingly unaffected by Walburga and Loki's hidden appearance. Could you show us the spirit catalog? Walburga requested in a demeanor completely unexpected of her. She sounded like an overjoyed schoolgirl. Even Loki was surprised by the sudden shift, but he quickly suppressed it. Does she want to pretend to be someone else? Yes, as you wish, miss, the store owner replied, pulling out a thick bound book from behind the cabinet shelves. Pick one, Walburga said as she looked down at Loki, who was swinging excitedly since he heard the word spirit. I can. Are there no restrictions? Loki said with anticipation. Preferably an owl spirit, since they're the fastest and the most reliable spirits while requiring the least amount of maintenance, but if you like something else, don't hesitate, Walburga said. Apart from owls, we have cats, toads and rats too. If you prefer a magical spirit, we have those too. A short plump woman manning the store spoke out, enticing Loki. Magical spirits? Loki asked, confused. Yes, for example a spirit Nezzle, they have very high intelligence and can detect untrustworthy people for you. Oh. Loki's eyes shined. Loki instantly began to look through the book, as he studied the images for something to pique his interest. The images were like the rest in the wizarding world, they moved and were animated, giving Loki a sense of their personality which he was picky about. That owl. She looks so beautiful, Loki thought. Do you like her? The lady said, pointing to the small white owl. Loki nodded. Then let us summon her to see if she's compatible with you. You can. Haha, yes we can. The lady then set up a short ritual and spoke out the few lines that summoned the owl. A pure white owl gilded into the store from the spirit world and landed on an empty perch. The white owl looked at Loki invitingly, but when he moved closer to the owl it just turned its head away. HMPF. Fine. If you don't like me, I don't want you either. The rejection led to a few embarrassed smiles, but the shop owner sent the owl away as Loki went back to turning through the pages of the spirit catalog. Loki shuffled through the book for a bit longer and with the help of the store owner summoned animals like toads and cats who seemed to be interested in just lazing about, making him to lose interest in them. That cat. It's ugly. Loki commented as he saw the picture of a rather ugly large orange cat and moved on. What animal is this, madam? Loki asked, looking at a small fluffy animal that was playing with a shiny coin that it had brought out of its pocket. Oh, do you like him? He's a niffler. They're naughty little spirits and rarely do nifflers come in the form of spirits. They take anything shiny as payment and are fierce protectors of their masters. And of course, they are cute too. Could you summon him please? Loki asked with a soft smile and kept his voice as sweet as he could so that the lady wouldn't get annoyed because he had already asked her to summon so many animals that he was feeling guilty about it. Of course. As soon as the niffler was summoned it began to look around for something shiny in the store and settled on the gem on Loki's bow tie. Loki slowly sneaked his hand behind the niffler that was busy looking at the gem, and when the niffler least expected it, Loki snatched the coin in its tiny hands. Hee hee. I got it. Loki teased as he played a game of catch in his hands, making the niffler run around. Squeak asterisk squeak asterisk squeak. Loki handed the coin to the niffler, who was happy at having received his treasure and calmly stuffed it back into its pocket after glaring a little at Loki. "I'll take him," Loki said, since he found the niffler too cute to pass. "Are you sure?" the shop owner asked, looking not at Loki but at Walburga. "Yes, that's fine with me," Walburga agreed. "I must remind you that nifflers are quite the thieves. They are hard to train and very uncivilized," the shop owner said with a worried expression. "And we don't do refunds." Walburga nodded and immediately paid the price for the niffler. "Here is the summoning call for him," the shop owner said, and handed a slip of parchment to Loki, who was overjoyed. "Thank you." Walburga and Loki soon returned home, as Walburga said there was nothing else to do for them there, even though Loki made it plenty clear he wanted to eat ice cream. All he got in response from Walburga was, "We have ice cream at home." "We aren't going to get me a wand?" Loki asked, saddened. "We'll get your wand later once you've decided on your pathway." "Oh, alright." Loki nodded, but something else was bugging him. "Why did you get me a contracted spirit grandma? HMPF. Why do I need a reason for doing such a thing? Everyone needs them so that they can communicate easily. Anyway, quickly set up a ritual to summon and contract the creature." "I know how you can do it," Walburga asked, and soon diverted the topic, but Loki had his suspicions. "Does she feel bad that I'll be all alone with just Elaine after she's slipped into her slumber?" Loki thought but didn't voice out loud. "Alright, I'm excited to get my first contracted creature too," Loki said, and immediately began to set up an altar to summon the niffler. He lit up a candle by rubbing his spirituality against it, and with Walburga in the room to keep him safe in case something wrong occurred, Loki spoke out the phrase on the paper in Latin, something Walburga had begun teaching him. "I call upon the creature that roams the unknowable, the creature that is naughty and likes shiny things and belongs to the species of a niffler, the creature that is contracted with the magical menagerie, the creature that is ready to form a contract with me." The candle flame flickered and glowed a little brighter before the space above it tore, and a small niffler appeared through it, landing on the altar. "I did it!" Loki exclaimed happily when the niffler arrived. The niffler looked around warily but immediately stopped once it noticed the gem on Loki's bow tie. "Would you be willing to form a contract with me for a shiny reward each time you deliver my letter?" Loki asked politely, and the niffler stood still, looking at the gem on his bow tie with jealousy. There was an awkward silence in the room as Loki started wondering if the niffler even understood him or not. *squeak. The niffler finally nodded, causing Loki to smile in relief and pat himself on the back for being such a great negotiator, since he felt like he had been pressuring the niffler by flicking a shiny galleon in his hand that the niffler definitely noticed. Walburga then handed over the contract written on goat skin in Latin to Loki, who infused a bit of his spirituality into it, following which the niffler did the same. Their actions formed a permanent contract which they couldn't easily slip through without paying a heavy price. Loki suddenly felt a connection form between him and the niffler. It suddenly felt like he could understand exactly what the niffler was saying with each of its squeaks. "Would you like to stay out with me outside, so I can show you to my little sister?" Loki asked, scratching the little guy under his chin. Squeak. The niffler squeaked and jumped onto Loki's hand. But instead of staying still in his hands or shoulders, the niffler rushed up his shoulders and immediately snatched the gem on the bowtie. Walburga glared at the niffler, but the niffler didn't back down. Instead, it argued with Walburga, with Loki acting as the intermediary. Squeak. He's telling you that to fulfill my request of following me around, he'll take one shiny object per day as payment for every day he is outside. HMPF. It's not like the Black family lacks in wealth. But a Black can be proud to say that we've never been on the losing end of a deal. Squeak. One shiny gem. Loki translated. "No, 10 shiny coins for 100 days and that's final." Squeak. 20 shiny coins for every 10. Loki translated, but Walburga cut him off. "No, not a single piece more than 8 for 50 days. And that's final." Squeak. 20 for 50 days. "Okay, final offer, or I'm sending you back to that poor shop owner. 8 pieces per 30 days. Squeak squeak. The Loki didn't have to translate the last part because they all could see how the niffler trembled at having to go back to the store owner. Was it really that terrible under her? Oh, I guess the store was not doing swimmingly. I think he agrees. Loki said happily, seeing the niffler finally snuggle into his collar and make its home there. I'll get an item made for you to be able to summon your messenger more easily without the ritual, Walburga said, bringing a smile to Loki's face. Thank you, Grandma. HMPF. Walburga looked away and spoke to Loki. You better spend all your time enjoying your time with the niffler. I want you to make those 8 coins worth it. Yes, Grandma. Loki immediately rushed up the stairs, moving at the fastest speed he was allowed to inside the house, and reached Elaine, who was playing with Creature. Look, Elaine. Look what I've gotten today. Loki shouted, overjoyed. Huh, what is it, Big Bewather? Look, Loki said, holding the niffler out like a lion. Waaaaaa. He's fluffy and cutteee. Elaine rushed up to Loki and immediately began to tickle the niffler, causing it to squeal in happiness. Big Bewather. Can I play with Princess Rapunzel? Princess Rapunzel. Yes, I need Princess Rapunzel to play with me. Elaine nodded and Loki looked at the niffler, who was looking at Elaine's toy princess crown with great interest. I guess your name is Princess Rapunzel from today, Loki said, but he wasn't sure if Princess Rapunzel was even paying attention to him while nodding to its name. Follow me, Walburga said as she saw Loki entering the hall where she was waiting for him. Good morning to you too, Mrs. Black, Loki said, bowing low while Princess Rapunzel, on his shoulder, mimicked him and bowed towards Walburga. Walburga rolled her eyes at Loki's antics and did not let his sarcastic greeting affect her mood. Stepping down low and into the basement, Walburga spoke softly to Loki, who was busy giving a shiny nickel to Princess Rapunzel for his earlier act. Have you thought about it? About what you mean, my pathway? Is it already time? Loki asked in a panic. Yes, I thought this would be the best time. Since your malnourished body has healed quite a bit, there shouldn't be any risk of losing control from the first potion. Loki immediately fell into a pinch as he wondered if he should let Walburga know about the Saphira Castle, or he would gulp down the Sequence 9 sleepless potion and wait for an opportunity to change his path like Emperor Russell later down the line. As they walked deeper into the basement, Loki looked around at all the various mystical items and charms stored there in an attempt to distract himself, but it just would not work. Do I tell Walburga that I have control over a Sephiroth? Reaching their destination at the end of the long inventory in the basement, Walburga paused over a glass case that was standing on an ornate golden table stand. Come closer, Walburga said, and Loki followed, his eyes coming to rest on the objects placed inside it. His mouth hung loose and his eyes nearly popped out of his sockets with how wide they had turned. He couldn't believe it. The items had turned him speechless. Looking at his reaction, Walburga could only smile with pride. Why are you so surprised about the card of blasphemy? Didn't I already tell you that I had the one for the darkness pathway? Walburga asked with a smile on her face. And Loki, who still had a shocked expression, pointed at the glass cupboard and said in a horrified whisper, You. Can't you see that? Ha ha. I know. It is a blasphemy card. Don't be so surprised. The Black family wouldn't be the most ancient and noble house for nothing if we didn't have even one of them. Holy shit. Loki cursed in his mind, forgetting the training he had been given about cursing till now. Holy shit. There's the blasphemy card for the error pathway in there. What the heckk? Walburga pulled out her wand and unlocked the glass case that no doubt had a ton of wards placed over it. The wards glimmered a shiny milky white as they were deactivated. Walburga to look at Loki again. Go on then. Take it out. Loki, who was stun-locked, broke out of his shock and looked at Walburga, who was urging him to pick up the card of blasphemy, and automatically extended his hand to move it through the glass case. He snatched the darkness pathway blasphemy card, but along with it he also picked up the blasphemy card for the error pathway. My heart's thundering. How's this possible? Did a darkness pathway true god really hide the blasphemy card for the error pathway? But why hide it in the first place? So that the celestial worthy of heaven and earth does not revive. But then, where are the blasphemy cards for the door and the fool pathways? A whole host of conspiracy theories rung inside Loki's head like the gong of a Buddhist monastery. The waves his thoughts created reached far and wide, turning every corner of his mind. His lips trembled, his eyes twitched, his fingers quivered and his entire being shook, yet he kept his calm as he stuffed the seemingly invisible blasphemy card into his pocket while holding the blasphemy card for the darkness pathway in his hand. Pour your spirituality into it, Walburga said with a calm mind. Loki, who was internally a typhoon of emotions, used all his training on how to be a noble for the past 2 months and barely managed a half-decent performance and poured his spirituality into the card. On its front face, the card had the picture of a veiled woman dressed in a fashionable morning gown holding 2 earthen pots. The pots were tilted to let the water in them flow freely, forming the beginning of a river that glimmered under the stars of the deep night sky. But as Loki poured in his spirituality, the image was being slowly replaced. The woman stood up with little difficulty as her pots vanished. She bathed in the starlight that shone in the deepest and darkest of nights, and her entire body shimmered as if it existed but was invisible at the same time, like a mirage over the desert sands. Loki grew entranced as he watched the image form and the card in his hands turn into a book. A wave of calmness passed over him once the transformation finished, leading him to believe in the authenticity of the cards. The card had begun to exude the same effect as the pathway it belonged to. This truly is a blasphemy card of the darkness pathway. Just holding it calms me down and brings the feeling of serenity that would only come about from a deity's presence. Aren't you going to open it? Walburga asked, snapping Loki out of the stare-off contest he was having with the woman in the card, which had turned into a thin book. Yes, Lady Black, I shall. With a slight increase in the amount of spirituality he was pouring in, Loki watched the page in the book turn and crack its pristine spine that had remained untouched for a long time. Loki first looked at the image above the potion formulae for sequence 9, sleepless, and came to a simple conclusion as he looked at it. The image was of a woman who was standing casually on the balcony of a house under the bright night where the sky was littered with stars. It's not Russell who made this. A woman did. Is she my senior? Transferred to the world of Harry Potter before me. Like Russell. Who's the woman in the picture's grandma? No one knows. Walburga shook her head with a slight sigh. Just like no one knows about the origin of magic, no one knows how these cards were made. I see. Loki nodded and began to read the potion ingredients for the first potion in the sequence. The spleen of a vampire bat. 3 stalks of fluxweed. A pinch of cowbane. 100 drops of rose oil. 4 nettle leaves. 5 knotgrass stalks. 100 drops of distilled water. Do we have all of this, Granny? Yes, they're here. Now, I want you to make the potion in front of me. Yes, I'll do it, Loki said, feeling resigned. I don't want to drink this potion. Is the only way to drink the error pathway sequence 9 potion by revealing the Sephiroth. Is there truly no other way? Come on, let's pick the ingredients, Walburga said, walking ahead of Loki and moving to a dark wood double-door cupboard in the basement. The cupboard looked ancient and made one wonder what treasures lay inside its double doors. The 2 doors had patterns carved in the wood which gave them an ancient feel, like the work of an ancient master craftsman. Walburga pulled Loki along by holding his hand, but he lagged behind her a little, worried that he was going to have to drink the potion from the darkness pathway instead of the error pathway. Grandma. Yes, I know you're nervous, but trust me, it'll all be alright in the end. But, Loki started but didn't speak further. He began ruminating over how he would break the news to her without sounding cuckoo. Walburga pulled open one side of the cupboard and explained, all the ingredients you'd need, they're right here. Now show me what you learned during your potion lessons and pick out all the right ingredients. Yes, Loki nodded, stiffly picking out an empty glass beaker to collect all his potion ingredients and make the potion. And although he was a little curious about what was on the other side of the cupboard, he suppressed his curiosity since he was currently worried about his life choices. That is the bat of a vampire spleen. Spleen of a vampire bat. Walburga corrected. Yes, that's what I meant. Loki said as he pulled down a glass jar and unscrewed the top to pick out a small dried fleshy spleen that he looked at with grimace. Picking another jar after this one, Loki recited the second potion ingredient, 3 stalks of fluxweed, dropping them into the beaker with the bat spleen. A pinch of cowbane, Loki said, collecting a pinch of cowbane in a small spatula and dropping it into the beaker. I can help you with 100 drops of rose oil, Walburga said, and picked out a glass bottle, turned it upside down over the beaker and counted the drops rapidly falling from it. There. All done, Walburga said, turning the bottle upright and closing it once again. But before she could take another step and place the bottle back into the cupboard, the bottle in her hands fell to the floor with a distinct ringing sound that would irritate anyone's ears. What happened, Grandma? Loki asked with worry as he ignored the rose oil that was slowly dripping onto the floor. It seems like I have very little time remaining, Walburga said, and leaned on the table, trying to hold herself from collapsing. What do I do, Grandma? Loki asked, trying to remain calm, but his toes curled in worry. Help me get into the coffin. Coffin? Loki asked with a soft quiver in his voice. Don't worry, I'm only going to be in a light slumber until you help me gain back my anchors. But, Loki stuttered, but Walburga's stern gaze shut him up, dragging him out of the pit of life choices he was facing just a moment ago. Phew, all right, Grandma. Now, come, help this bag of old bones, Walburga said, holding Loki's shoulders to support herself. Do you need me to call creature Grandma? No, that won't be necessary. Loki slowly walked Walburga to the coffin that was standing in the basement and helped her slip into it. Take care of yourself, Loki, Walburga said with a soft smile that was uncharacteristic of her as she stroked Loki's cheeks. Yes, Grandma, Loki said with slightly teary eyes. Don't worry. Everything's going to be alright. Yes, Grandma, Loki said, totally not stiff, his voice definitely not quivering at all, and his eyes not tearing up at all. Shut it then. I can feel it, I'm getting closer, Walburga said as Loki spotted her skin forming curves and bumps as if something inside was trying to crawl out of her. Yes, Grandma, Loki said with clear sadness as he began to close the coffin door. But before he fully closed it, Loki opened it quickly and then ran up to Walburga and gave her one last tight hug, which Walburga returned even though it wasn't noble or mighty. In this moment Walburga was just like any other old grandma, worried about her new little grandchild. Go on now. Let me rest. These bones have become tired from the long time they've worked, they need it. Good luck, Walburga said with a soft smile as she pushed Loki away, allowing him to finally close the door shut, sending Walburga into a sweet dreamless slumber that he did not know how long she would wake up from. Squeak squeak. Princess Rapunzel squeaked and nuzzled Loki's cheeks, trying to comfort him since he could feel his loss. Loki sighed as he stared at the shut coffin for a while before he left and moved back to his potion-making station. He picked up the fallen rose oil bottle and began to wipe clean the oil that had spilled onto the floor. It already feels lonely, Loki spoke out loud to no one in particular and pushed himself to complete the rest of the potion. Something bland and something repetitive was essential in these moments to take his mind off the depressing afternoon life had tossed at him. And potion making was perfect for it. 4 nettle leaves, Loki said, picking out a jar that had nettle plant stalks in it and dropping the leaves in the beaker. After which, he picked up a glass jar and unscrewed its lid to gain access to 5 knotgrass stalks, which he also placed in the beaker silently this time since there was no audience to witness or even correct his actions. Then moving on to the last ingredient, Loki picked up a flask labeled pure distilled water and used a glass pipette to transfer 100 drops of it into the beaker. The ingredients inside had already begun to shimmer and mix, but Loki calmly placed the beaker over a burner and began to heat it a little on soft low blue alchemical flames. The reaction sped up and the ingredients dissolved cleanly until it all melded together to form a uniform black liquid that had coffee brown strands of threads shimmering inside it, waiting to be consumed by someone else. Sigh, I made the potion, but I doubt anyone is going to drink it. Could I give it to Elaine? No, she's too young and might easily lose control. Do you want to drink it, Princess Rapunzel? Loki asked with a soft smile. Squeak squeak squeak. Seeing the niffler nod, Loki's eyes widened and then he laughed. No, little princess, there is not going to be any potion for you. Squeak squeak squeak. No dear, I don't know what will happen if a spirit drinks a Beander potion. Squeak squeak squeak. You feel good about it. I mean, there was etiquette who became a spirit to escape the Rose School of Thought. But, can ordinary spirits even drink a potion? Loki asked no one in particular. But then he shook his head quickly. Etiquette was able to become a spirit because of her pathway. No. What if something happens to you? Wait. But you can interact with the coins that I give you. So will you be fine after all? Loki wondered and mused out loud for a bit before he finally said, You need to wait for a little while, Princess Rapunzel. I want to do a little research to see if anything happens to spirits that consume Beander potion. Squeak squeak. You'll stay put. Good. Thank you. Because now I need to make a potion for myself. A potion from the error pathway. Loki's eyes were firm and his mood was somber, but he kept himself composed as he reached for the blasphemy card of the error pathway. His mind wanted to wander to Walburga's sudden passing, but he remained harsh on himself. He knew if he thought about her right now he'd break down and become a mess that would easily lose control upon consuming the potion. Did her suddenly losing control have something to do with how she didn't go to that room for an hour today? Not now, Loki. Not now. But, Loki stared at the card of blasphemy, apparently invisible to people other than himself. His fingers traced the design etched into the card as he spoke with a slight frustration. This card, it's been activated. At least going by the knowledge I have of the cards from the novel. Emperor Russell's cards were locked behind a password. If the maker of the cards in this world employed such a tactic, it means that someone has unlocked this card earlier. But, who did it? And why is it in the Black family household and still unknown to the world? Was it my senior? Another reincarnate who entered this world and became a Beander of the error pathway? I can't come to such conclusions without any proof, although now that I think about it, wouldn't there be cocoons in the Saphira castle that have other people trapped inside it if there are multiple reincarnates? What do you think, Princess Rapunzel? Squeak squeak. The niffler squealed in Loki's arms trying to reach the darkness pathway potion, but Loki held him tight and prevented him from reaching it. Hold on, just wait a little bit and I'll give you the potion, Loki said, pacifying the niffler. Squeal. The niffler finally calmed down and allowed Loki to pour his spirituality into the blasphemy card of the error pathway. There were two people drawn onto the card, a woman and a man. Both people on the card were dressed in professional clothes, like snake oil salesmen, the woman in a strict office skirt and shirt while the man was in a three-piece suit, smiling a smile that did not reach their eyes. A gray fog floated behind them in which a giant angel hovered, gazing with serenity and compassion. His arms were outstretched, seeming to bless the woman and man below him. A large vertical tree with random things like clocks, infinity and a Rubik's cube stood tall behind the man, while a large tree with various runes stood behind the woman. The only thing common between the people on the card was a monocle. A golden monocle that looked too illusory to be real on their right eye. Seeing the monocle, Loki felt a shiver run down his spine. Is there a replacement for Aemon in this world? If there is, I'll be gone before I can even utter the word Saphira in front of him. The safest path would be to wait and look for the fool's blasphemy card. But I doubt I'm ever going to find it if there have already been so many coincidences to make me reach the error blasphemy card. As Loki continued putting his spirituality into the card, it morphed into a book and the picture on its cover changed. The people on the card vanished, only to be replaced by a woman wearing a single monocle, a black dress and a robe, as she leaned on a golden cane and nudged her golden monocle ever so slightly. She held a knowing smile as if she could directly see Loki, who was pouring his spirituality into the card. There was an aura of danger around her, yet it seemed like you could trust her with your deepest secrets. Squeak. The niffler squeaked and snapped Loki out of his thoughts as he flipped the first page of the book and looked at the potion formulae and the picture on the page. Sequence 9, Marauder. Damn. Who knew I was prepared all my life for this sequence? Loki said as his eyes glazed over the acting requirements for the sequence. To become a successful marauder you need to act as if thievery and banditry are your calling. The higher the sequence you steal from, the faster your potion digests. So do I plan a heist from a high sequence beyonder, or multiple low to mid sequence beyonders? Well, I can do as much stealing as possible until I have an opportunity to steal from some high sequence beyonder. Ha, look at me talking about stealing from a high sequence beyonder as if it's going to be a casual walk in the park. What do I need to make the potion ingredients then? Perhaps I can order from Diagon Alley with creature's help. A tablespoon of flobberworm mucus. 7 stalks of fluxweed. Waxpert dust. A finger digit of boomslang skin. 100 drops of pure distilled water. 100 drops of horklump juice. What's a waxpert? I never read about them. Loki walked toward the cupboard and stood in front of the open side to tally the ingredients he hadn't needed to order from an apothecary from Diagon Alley. We have fluxweed, it was also used in the sleepless potion. Boomslang skin is available, we also have pure distilled water and horklump juice. So we need flubberworm mucus and waxpert dust. But what the hell is waxpert dust? Princess Rapunzel, where are you going? But before Loki could turn around and look at the niffler, his eyes shifted to the closed side of the cupboard. Wait a minute. Loki looked at the closed side of the cupboard suspiciously, and then suddenly his eyes widened as a stray thought crossed his mind. Moving toward the cupboard, Loki held the closed side and swung it open. And to his surprise, a new array of various potion ingredients with their labels came into view. I knew it. So there has been someone in the Black family who was of the error pathway before. Loki immediately moved closer to the cupboard and began to search for the waxpert. Going through the labels, Loki's eyes finally zeroed in on the seemingly empty glass jar on the shelf right in front of him. It was labeled waxpert dust. Sigh, it's empty. Loki sighed, yet he picked up the glass jar to keep it out so that he would remember to order it later. This jar is heavy. Why is it so heavy though? Oh my god. Could it be? Loki immediately opened the lid and stuck his finger into the jar, only to feel some resistance that stopped his hand from going through. Oh my god. An invisible ingredient. How does this even work? How did wizards even find out this stuff existed? Look, Princess Rapunzel. An invisible ingredient. Do you want some of it? Loki said, turning around to the small tiny niffler that was sitting inside an empty glass beaker. What are you doing with the beak? Hold on. Did you drink the sleepless potion that was inside the beaker? Burp. God, you're so troublesome. Squeak asterisk squeak asterisk squeak. The niffler shivered in fear and his body bulged out arbitrarily, creating faint protrusions all along. But to bring them to a halt and prevent Princess Rapunzel from losing control, Loki immediately interfered. Listen to me calmly, you're going to be alright as long as you do what I say. Squeak. Imagine as many circles of lights as you can and stack them one on each other. The niffler listened to Loki and did as he requested, causing the faint protrusions to calm down and settle inside the body. The niffler instead began to look around everything in a new light. What you're seeing right now should be because of cogitation, which you did just now. To come out of it, just close your eyes and distract yourself, tell your spirituality that it is all right and that it should end. That will do the trick. Loki urged calmly. Squeak squeak. The niffler squeaked and closed its eyes and after a moment opened them again. Before Loki could speak anything, Princess Rapunzel rushed toward him and jumped onto his shoulder. You were scared. Squeak squeak. Don't worry, nothing will happen now. You are fine now. Calm down. Loki said, scratching the niffler under its ear to calm him down. Once the niffler had calmed down with one final squeak, Loki got the flubberworm mucus from the right side of the cupboard and began to prepare the sequence 9, marauder potion. And all that's left is heating it after adding 100 drops of pure distilled water. Sucking up a little bit of pure distilled water into the pipette, Loki gradually poured 100 drops into the beaker that now contained a variety of ingredients and was sitting atop a burner. 98, 99, and 100. With the last drop into the beaker, Loki immediately turned on the burner and began to watch with fascination how the individual ingredients all melded together and began to fuse into a greenish satin-like liquid that had glitter sprinkled in it. Squeak squeak. Princess Rapunzel squeaked in fear as she tried to stop Loki from drinking the potion, afraid that something would happen to him by pulling on his ears, but Loki persisted. "Don't worry, Princess Rapunzel, nothing will happen to me, remember how I helped you out. I will help myself similarly," Loki said, and petted Princess Rapunzel until he was satisfied and placed him down on the counter in front of him. Looking at the beaker that contained the potion he so greedily desired, Loki gulped audibly before making a hasty attempt at grabbing the beaker and glooping the potion in its entirety. "Arg, thick. It feels like a slug is sliding down my throat." The entire potion in the beaker slipped into Loki's mouth without leaving a drop behind as it followed its way down to his stomach and immediately began to work its magic. It felt like a wave was passing through his body, like time was ticking differently for each of his cells. A thrum of power echoed and distorted his senses. The gray fog converged in his vision and he immediately saw himself in third person, extricated from the body he had transmigrated into, the body that was now convulsing beneath him. He could see Princess Rapunzel was worried and screeching to try and get his attention to help him, but everything seemed confusing right now. A rampant murmuring entered his ears, much like the wails of a banshee, yet he paid attention, capturing a few words that screamed louder than the rest. "Walburga, Hogwarts, Walburga, Hogwarts, Walburga, Hogwarts." But hearing the murmurings of fate extracted a price from Loki, his body rapidly descended into madness and chaos as it started to morph into a rough creature. "Bollocks. I'm losing control." Loki immediately willed his spirituality to return, causing his spirit body to snap back into his physical body. Then closing his eyes, he imagined the outline of 7 light spheres and began to stack them up on each other as if he were building a tower. The convulsions slowed down at first and then stopped, with his body reforming back into normal. Loki slowly opened his eyes only to find the little niffler biting his finger to show him his anger. Squeak squeak squeak. Hee hee. Sorry for the scare. I'm all right now. Squeak squeak. Sorry, come on, climb onto my shoulder, I'm going to try something out. Loki slowly brought his fingers in front of his eyes until the palms face each other. Focusing on the gap between the tips of index fingers on the 2 hands, Loki slowly moved them away. A red color flared between his fingers and caused Loki to become surprised at how realistic it looked, but he kept at it and slowly widened his vision. The entire world around him was suddenly swimming with colors. He then looked at the mirror nearby that showed his reflection. His limbs were red, his head a dainty purple, his circulator system and organs a bright green, his throat and nervous system a deep blue, his excretory system a shade of orange, and his digestive system a pale yellow. Overall, his body was cloaked in a blanket of white that indicated his good health. Satisfied with the health of his body, Loki looked around. What is this place? A gold mine? Loki wondered, since he could now inherently guess the value of all the things around him, and everything felt like it was worth more than its weight in gold. The potion had given him the ability to instinctually guess a close to the precise value of an object. After looking around the room, Loki's eyes then fell on the little critter who was still a little worried about him. Noticing his gaze, the niffler squeaked. A white light cloaked him too and showed he was in good health, causing Loki to sigh in relief. So our bodies are all right, huh? Loki nodded in satisfaction and brought his hand close to Princess Rapunzel. The niffler sniffed his fingers a little and then jumped on his hands and ran up to his other shoulder, switching sides. Squeak squeak. Ha ha. I know it looked risky, but I promise that all of it's worked all right for me. I'm fine. Loki nodded. Loki blinked and looked around the room, especially at the ingredients in the cupboard that all had a color attached to them. Huh, so even in this world Beyonder ingredients have a remnant spirituality attached to them. In general, the reds around the room were redder, the blues were bluer, and everything felt like it was contrasted by much. All the pathways around the room felt like they popped out more to Loki. Not because of their colors but because Loki could feel his brain coming up with the best ways he could escape from the room should there be a need to do so. His vision felt a little more controllable, so Loki tried it out to see what was up with it, and he spotted himself able to control the amount of light his eyes could use. It felt like he could see perfectly in the darkness with very little darkness. His fingers felt more dexterous and his hand felt like they could carry much heavier things only using his fingers. His strength had increased, but that was only a little. He'd still lose in a fight with an adult. Jumping on his toes, Loki could feel how balanced his body felt. Although not as exaggerated as a Sequence 8 clown, Loki felt he could control his body pretty well. After testing everything about the potion, Loki finally turned to look at the coffin and saw Walburga's spirituality inside it. His mood immediately turned a little depressed. Instead of the white color of a healthy body, Walburga seemed to be covered in a dark hue that represented her sickness. What is that? 5, maybe 6 years at most. Although this was the first time Loki had been using spirit vision, he instinctively knew how long Walburga had left. Loki then felt his glabella spasm a little and he knew that it was time to end his adventurous journey with spirit vision. He closed his eyes and forced his spirituality to converge and end his spirit vision so that he could go back to looking at things normally. Sigh troublesome. Loki whispered as his eyes lay on Walburga's coffin once again. I need to figure out what to do with her. Especially when one of the wailings I heard when I drank the potion was her name. How is she related to my advancement in the error pathway? And I need to figure out what the deal is with Hogwarts. I guess I can study about it until the next couple of months before I get my invitation letter. Loki, hanging upside down from a pole hung across the door, read about the various patterns of wand movements that caused spells to occur. But slowly, with the blood rushing into his head, Loki's thoughts eventually wandered. A week earlier, when Loki had spent a long time inside the house getting comfortable with his new powers, he made his first attempt. An attempt at stealing to digest his potion. He stole from a random passerby on the street, but it didn't digest his potion even a little. If it did, it was too insignificant to even feel. I need to do something big. But what? A voice suddenly interrupted his machinations. Big BW other, are you going to play soon? Elaine asked Loki with a smile on her face. She was holding a fluffy toy that Creature had recently gifted her. The fluffy toy was a Creature look-alike and replaced his presence when he was busy with the upkeep of the house, or probably recharging all the generational wards placed around to keep intruders out. What happened to Lokify? Loki asked. Lokify was the fluffy toy that looked like him. She also had a Walburga with her, a fluffy toy that was a Walburga look-alike. Walburga was what started this trend of converting people into voodoo dolls. It happened because Elaine missed Walburga and her silly little magic tricks desperately, to the point she cried for a long time. Lokify was sent to the execution ground because he didn't play with his sister. Elaine said with narrow eyes and folded arms while looking away in anger. Gak. Loki dramatically clutched his chest and pretended to be hurt as if his heart had been shattered into a million pieces. Big BW other, Creature says it is not good for you to hang upside down like that, Elaine said with a worried expression that immediately melted Loki's heart and fixed back all the pieces. Does he now? Loki asked with surprise, since Creature had been mostly silent after Walburga had moved into her dreamless slumber. Elaine nodded. Seeing his sister insisting, Loki got down from the bars and stood up straight to look at his sister. It has already been 2 months since then, huh? Loki thought as he studied Elaine's beautiful dress, one of the many Walburga had knitted for her using magic. Walburga had offered to clean the dress their mother had gifted Elaine, and get rid of the blood on it, but Elaine thought otherwise. She said, I will do it myself. Eventually, she stitched herself a bush of roses colored by Loki's blood. Loki sighed and ruffled Elaine's hair, but then a silly thought struck him. Elaine, do you want to go cause some trouble? Trouble? Isn't that something only bad people do, Big Bewather? Haha, yes. But sometimes it is alright for good guys to also cause bad guys some trouble. Who will you cause trouble, Big Bewather? Remember Ludwig and his gone. Let's go. Elaine shouted before Loki even ended his sentence. She had even adopted a fighting stance, like she was ready to beat up some thugs. Loki could almost see miniature suns lighting up in Elaine's eyes at the mention of Ludwig and his gang. Haha, why do you hate them so much? Loki asked, rubbing Elaine's head affectionately. Because they did bad things to Big Bewather. Elaine pouted with a cute angry face. Haha, okay. We'll teach them a lesson this time. Are you going to do magic to them, Big BW other? Yes, Elaine, we'll make them see a miracle. Hee hee, okay Big Bewather. Let's go. Creature. Loki shouted, causing the little elf to teleport into the hallway with a loud pop. At your service, master, Creature said, his eyes still red and puffy. We'll be leaving for a while. We'll be back before dinner though. Loki said with a slightly saddened expression, but he kept his sorrows in check. It's 7 in the evening. We should be back by 9. Please take care of Miss Elaine, Creature said with a polite bow. You don't have to remind me, Creature, she's my only little sister, Loki said with a smile, patting Elaine's head. It's my duty, master. Shall I see you through the door? No worries, we'll show ourselves out. Creature promptly nodded, and Elaine and Loki began to walk to the end of the hallway where the door was located. As they passed the entrance, Loki looked back at all the heads of the previous house elves lining the wall that reminded Loki of the craziness of the Black family, and then he remembered what he'd planned for the day. Haha, I guess I truly have become a member of the Black family too. Along with the heads, Loki's eyes gradually settled on the large portrait that was fixed onto the wall with a permanent sticking charm. It was the portrait of Walburga herself. She looked at Loki with an almost imperceptible smile and warmth in her eyes, but soon turned away and ignored him. Over the past 2 months, Loki's body had mostly adjusted to the routine food, and all remaining signs of malnourishment had vanished. But the random murmurings and the occasional disembodied beings had been added to his perception since he hadn't digested most of it yet. However, since his body started to improve because of the potion, he felt like he was reborn anew. While experimenting with the abilities he gained from the potion, he tried moving around in the house and he noticed something. His body was now much more nimbler than before, and his senses had all been amplified. His fingers, which were already dexterous before, were now flexible to an even greater level. He could create wacky shapes with them without having cramps. No doubt directly in line with his current profession to act as a marauder. Above all, with his training from Walburga and his potion abilities, it would be quite hard to figure out what Loki was thinking and feeling without using spirit vision to study his astral body or delve into his body of heart and mind. Stepping out into the streets, Loki looked at the dark night that had blanketed the otherwise busy city. But Loki could see perfectly clear in these conditions courtesy of his potion, which provided him night vision. Darkness is a thief's friend. Of course, it makes sense that I be able to see in the dark. Is it also a coincidence that the Black family belongs to the darkness pathway? Holding Elaine's hands, Loki began to walk towards the distinct place he remembered, one that was frozen in his memory because it was his first in this world. The street where the original Loki was murdered and the new Loki took over. It was an alleyway that had no street lights or even lamps, but Loki could see clearly and he navigated the street while holding Elaine. But before he left the Black Manor, he quickly paused, left to his room to do something, and came back as quickly as he'd left. It's better I take them, just in case something happens and I need to hide myself. After taking whatever he needed, Loki and Elaine made their way to the warehouse where Ludwig and his band of thugs usually gathered. Let's begin, little sis, Loki said as they reached the outside of a warehouse that still had its lights turned on. With Elaine's confirmation, Loki picked her up on his back and then nimbly climbed over the broken walls and air conditioning units to finally reach a window high up on the walls. A window that gave him a vantage point to scope out his targets. There were several people inside the warehouse Loki was peeping into, but his eyes drifted towards a small room in the background. Loki quickly pulled out a whistle from his pocket and blew on it forcefully. But instead of a blaring sound that would have revealed their position, a small space around Loki tore from which an even smaller niffler poked its face out. You know what to do, Princess Rapunzel. Loki said, pointing at the small room behind the group that had gathered in the warehouse. Squeak squeak. I know, but we'll think of a new name later. For now, help us. Squeak squeak. And with those final words, the niffler rushed into the warehouse, climbing along the walls and windows until it disappeared into the darkness of the night. Gentlemen, I'm here with a solution for you. A faint but bold voice resounded inside the warehouse, attracting Elaine and Loki's attention. It was Ludwig. Loki mumbled and Elaine tightened her grip on Loki, the man who had been the source of all of the original Loki's troubles. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.